This is
Columbus Police.
The Hunt for the Truth.
Tech 44.
I'm worried about my country. I love my country, and I feel like it's going to you nowhere.
We're fired up. Dissent is patriotic. Revolt against socialism and Marxism. Do not quit. Do not stop. Don't be discouraged. Be strong. Do not lose belief. Be steadfast. You are a citizen of the most powerful force of good on this creation, the United States of America. USA, 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 USA.
Dirk Thompson.
Oh, greetings from high above the Levec
By
Tower.
ransomware
Let's find out
attack,
what's going on in the world.
Europol, the Pan-European Security Service, expects the threat from such cyber attacks to escalate and warns the number of victims will grow as people return to work after the weekend. Microsoft head Brad Smith has criticized the manner in which governments store details about security weaknesses in computer systems. Companies have employed cybersecurity experts to work over the weekend to stall further infection. Even though the spread of the virus slowed over the weekend, further attacks are expected as the original hackers or others can easily change the virus code to make it difficult to guard against. Some of Europe's largest companies were hit on Friday, including Renault, Deutsche Bahn, FedEx, and the Russian Interior Ministry. In the UK, 61 National Health Service trusts were infected, which led to chaos and cancellations.
North Korea has claimed that the new type of ballistic missile it launched on Sunday is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Although the claims remain unverified, it is known that the secretive communist regime test-fired a rocket which travelled over 700 kilometers before crashing into the Sea of Japan. The US said the missile was fired from Kusong, a city which plays home to much of North Korea's military activity, including munitions factories and uranium mines. It is believed that the missile fired was one of those put on display during a parade of the regime's military might in April. The so-called Hwasong-12 was described by North Korean state media as a medium to long-range ballistic rocket.
China is hosting a major international conference, the One Belt, One Road Initiative. The move, announced by President Xi Jinping in 2013, mimics the historic Silk Road trade route that will link China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe.
News Talk 614. Well, it is a Monday, and welcome to the Hunt for the Truth. Broadcasting from up extremely high above the Levec Tower, state capital of Ohio, looking down at Broad and High Street, seeing little minions of John Kasich running around left and right. We are going to be spending the next 4 hours looking at things going on in the world, here in Columbus, across this great state, and from the Atlantic to the Pacific, around the world, and into outer space. Also, coming up, speaking of Ohio, we're going to be speaking with a gentleman who has been involved in radio and talk radio, all formats of radio, including, was once the zoo master of the infamous and famous Morning Zoo in New York City. I first met him when he was the program director and afternoon drive talk artist at WSPD in Toledo. Brian Wilson from the Libertarian Media Project will be with us. He's got a brand new book out, which is very, very interesting, and I think we're going to enjoy also sharing some of the stories from that. But more importantly, I want to talk with Brian. He is a very strong, well-known libertarian, not necessarily a political and tied into the party, but libertarianism in general, plus the state of talk radio. One of the reasons we're doing newstalk614.com and the TeamTRUMP radio network, trying to grow up local live talk shows across this state, is the talk radio in the last 15 years has drastically changed from one of local interaction to one of, at times, unfortunately, nationalized propaganda. Over the weekend, though, we have something going on that comes in from the around the world category, actually 2 items, but the first one also involves outer space. Now, if you were following my text vomiting on my Facebook wall over the weekend, you'll see that there were 2 very important stories that ad nauseum I kept trying to tell you about. And it's one of the things I want to talk with Brian about, because I mentioned a couple of times last week, it's like I am seriously getting to the point of wondering, is any of this good at all? The North Koreans launched a missile, which I will get into the details after 11:30 about, which is absolutely terrifying, and again proves all of the pundits and even military analysts that after their military parade where they displayed some new missiles, some of them were even saying, oh, those were fake. Well, over the weekend, they proved those people wrong, and even more terrifying is the capability of this brand new missile successfully launched. And oh, by the way, over the weekend also, China laid out its plans to basically take over the world with the style of Chinese communism. And people were applauding it. We're going to break down exactly what the president of China, Xi Jinping, said over the weekend. And Russia was there. Turkey was there. And they all endorsed what is called the Belt and Road Initiative. I, though, call it Belt and Road Strategy. So we'll be breaking that down, as well as coming up Kirkwood here in central Ohio. A multiple murder happened. We're going to get more details as those are breaking over the weekend. Well, the fraternity case in Penn State, it's the more the details came out this weekend. It's absolutely sickening. Oh, and for the media's enjoyment, we had yet again another airplane incident caught on people's cell phones. Never in my life we would see events going on, even beatdowns in the streets of this country with people not doing anything except sticking out their hands. I mean, George Orwell would have written this in if he could have conceived such devices as the smartphone. So we're going to get into all of that. Brian Wilson from the Libertas Media Project is going to be joining us next, just 5 minutes from now, on News Talk 614.com.
Dirk Thompson.
Love your show. I think you rank up there higher than Glenn Beck, and he's pretty high on my list, about even with Rush.
Now, see, that's just silly talk right
No,
there.
it is not.
Brian Cranston for the Will Rogers Institute.
There are lots of things in life that can take your breath away. Your first love, seeing the world. But life isn't the only thing that can take your breath away. Asthma is responsible for more sick days and ER visits than any other condition.
For your free booklet, visit wrinstitute.org or call toll-free 877-957-7575 and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
There are many good reasons to be left breathless. Help make sure asthma isn't one of them.
The Will Rogers Institute, since 1936.
And you will undoubtedly hear it many more times as the days go by. Now, just in case you're hazy on exactly what it means, let me give you a rough idea. It means that the cost of your clothes and food has gone up to a point where the family budget has become somewhat strained. Well, that's one of those things, and you can't be expected to increase the family income. But there are some things you can do to help. For instance, take better care of your clothes. When you come home from school, change into old clothes before you go out to play. Take care of your health, because doctors and medicines are expensive. Eat well, but don't waste. Take your full share, but eat all you take. Try not to ask Mother and Dad to buy you things you don't actually need. Make the best and the most of what you've got. Try to be more than usually careful of your school equipment, such as paper, pencils, and so forth. Make them last and go as far as you possibly can. Remember that all members of a family must pull together at a time like this. So do your share.
Hi, I'm Val Dolcini, the administrator of the USDA Farm Service Agency in Washington, D.C., with an important reminder for livestock producers. January 30, 2015 is the deadline to apply for assistance if you suffered qualifying disaster-related livestock or grazing losses between October 1, 2011 and December 31, 2014. The Livestock Indemnity Program and the livestock forage program were reauthorized by the 2014 Farm Bill to provide relief to ranchers impacted by drought, blizzards, and other natural disasters. You have just a few more days until that January 30 deadline to visit your local Farm Service Agency office to file an application for payment and compensation. Learn more on the web at disaster.fsa.usda.gov or call your local FSA county office. Don't wait. Act today.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the USDA Farm Service Agency.
Needs the comfort and inspiration of religious faith, for it is faith which helps hold our families together, builds moral and spiritual character. And today, perhaps more than ever before, there's a need to turn to a way of life based on the enduring principles of religion. There are a great many programs of religious nature on NBC Radio, which you'll enjoy hearing this Sunday. Among them, The Art of Living, the National Radio Pulpit, Eternal Light, the Lutheran Hour, the Catholic Hour, and the Hour of Decision conducted by Billy Graham. These are but a few of the broadcasts that will bring you inspiration and comfort not only this Sunday, but on the Sundays to come. Of course, the Easter message will be the highlight event this week. We know you'll enjoy hearing them as a supplement to your visit to the church of your choice. And when you do go to church this Sunday, take the whole family with you.
For almost 2 centuries, Americans have enjoyed the valuable privileges of freedom. Now, freedom needs each American to dedicate himself to its preservation. We must not allow our liberties to be endangered by neglect of our duties as citizens. During this year of rededication, join with your fellow Americans in reaffirming the principles on which this country is founded and the safeguarding of those principles. Make it your business to see that federal, state, and local governments are conducted honestly. Help to maintain the good morale of your sons and daughters in the armed forces. Learn the facts about all candidates and issues. Then vote for the one you believe in. Make the most of every minute on your job. Produce as much as you can, and thus increase our military and economic strength. Work for better schools and a better community. Guard your American heritage of freedom. It needs you.
Your freedoms, your liberties are being taken away. Please welcome Dirk Thompson, Hunt for the Truth.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!" I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change."
How many stations is this going on?
67.
I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta.
We're not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore."
Well, friends, what is actually going on in the world? It is For the Truth, Dirk Thompson, broadcasting live from the state capital of Ohio on the Team Trump Radio Network and News Talk 614.com. By the way, real quick, it is our spring share-a-thon, and we're not, fashion radio station and asking for you to actually send us money. We just want you to literally share a link to the fan page for News Talk 614 on Facebook. You can get there very easily. If you're not already, just go to newstalk614.com, and that zips you right to the Facebook page. 3 things you could ask people to do as part of the share-a-thon. Number 1, at the top of the page, click like. Number 2, and most importantly, you have to click follow if you want to get live notifications whenever one of our live shows. And then what the share-a-thon's all about, click share. Share it to your own personal timeline, but more important, share it to any of your Facebook you think would enjoy programming here at Talk14.com. As promised, joining us now from the Libertas Media Project, the one, the only, you've probably seen me link to him constantly. He always puts posts on his Facebook wall that at least they get you thinking, if not taking action. And the Libertas Media Project, where he has Judge Andrew Napolitano speak every week now, isn't it, Brian? Brian Wilson joined us.
So hold on a second. I was just tearing up the check I was going to send you. I'll just do the Facebook link. Yeah, pretty much every Wednesday, the judge and I get together and we we talk for 15, 20 minutes, depending upon how much slack Fox will give him, and he's not running off to Stuart Varney or Fox and Friends or
Is
Brett Baer
there
or something.
anything, speaking of Fox and Napolitano, is there anything that you might be able to shed a little light on publicly that went on with that? Because that had the buzz of a lot of people in my line of thinking just going crazy.
Well, I can tell you that the buzz was pretty much a crock. He was not suspended. He was not benched. He was not taken out of circulation to allow the news cycle to run through or any of that. It was more, he's called upon to give his judicial opinion and analysis on various stories. You know, they don't come up there and ask him about gun control. They don't call him in and ask him about severe weather sweeping the Midwest. You know, they ask him about Supreme Court nominees and lower court decisions, things along that order, and there just wasn't anything during that period of time. I suppose that there might be something to the notion that they wanted to see whether or not the predictions that he made that about the three highly placed intelligence sources that talked about the British version of the NSA doing the spying for Obama and blah, 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 which all turned out to be true. That was the thing that was so rather astounding that by the time he went back on the air, some people were equally amazed that he told Fox and Friends, yeah, I stand by everything because it's proving to be true. And of course, the only thing that I thought was really kind of gooey was that Fox didn't step up and say, hey, you know what? You know, the judge came in here with a story. He was exactly right. As it turned out, he was ahead of the game. No one else, including us, were on top of it until after the fact, which is part of journalism, you know, sticking with provable facts and sourceable quotes and things like that. But they didn't. But they did ultimately get around to it, and then naturally it got swept under the carpet, and nobody was reporting anything about anything because we all had to get our panties in a wad over the Russians, you know, that type of thing.
One of the interesting things about that entire issue is once I found out who the was that he was and got some of the information from, that was a group of former intelligence people from both sides of the aisle that way back in 2000 and 2003 come out strongly against the Iraq War. And at that time, the liberal media was fully endorsing their findings. And this time around, they try to discredit the group.
Well, consistent inconsistency is pretty much the name of the game, or double standard if you'd prefer. It's just like you're seeing with Comey. You know, first we hated him, then we loved him, then we hated him, then we loved him. Just depends on where the Republicans are, or the liberals are, or whatever in any given situation. If there's anybody who's looking for any sort of consistency out of Washington, D.C., my favorite logic-free zone, there is no, forget it. You know, that's a hopeless cause.
Did you see the joke gone bad with Stephen Colbert at the end of the week last week?
Yeah, I saw that. It's, you know, I see it, you know, but as you and I talked a little bit a week or so, or last week, whatever, it's on and gone, you know. It's so much, to quote Shakespeare, it's much to do about nothing. It's a tempest in a teapot. It's everybody getting their panties in a wad over something that has no direct relevance on anything except whatever you're seeing in front of your eyeballs on your computer screen. I mean, stop and think about it. You know, I used to forget last week. It was a joke gone bad. Everybody, yeah, right, okay. But it was a big deal at the time. You know, I wish people would get equally exercised about things like what's really going on in the world and whether or not Comey was fired on good or bad grounds.
Just to let the folks know that don't spend many hours consuming media or the Facebook, like maybe they only do it on the weekends, and you're feeling a little left out right now going, what did Colbert do last week? You know, because we know what happened the week before. He came out and he announced that James Comey had been fired, and we all know it's a liberal audience there in the studio. They start clapping and going crazy, and the look on his face, it was like, a minute. And then he had to try to explain to the audience that they should not be applauding this. So I just wanted to bring people in the loop. So that's one of the things I hate about radio sometimes. You tune in, and they're talking about something that you're interested in, and then you don't know what they're really talking about. So we brought everybody up to speed there. And so what?
And I think it's a bad practice. I used
Really?
to think it was. I used to think it was the thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, as you were told in little announcers school back in the day, that when you come back from a commercial break, you restage the conversation for the benefit of people who just wandered in and so on. And okay, great, but when you restage everything and when you have to go back and explain and so on, you're boring the crap out of the people that have been sincere enough, interested enough, dedicated enough, loyal enough to have been there since your opening staging.
So then those people go.
If other people
Why in the hell are you repeating all of this information?
Yeah, what the hell? If you don't know what we're talking about, Google it for God's sakes. You can do what was the Colbert joke? What? Get yourself up to do.
Let me stop you right there, because according to Little Baby Talk Show host School Brian, this is the point where I should reintroduce you and say we're speaking with Brian Wilson from the Libertas Media Project, and a former zoo master at the Z100 Morning Zoo, and former program director at WSPD. Ohio, who's got a new book out we're going to be getting into. So what you're saying is I shouldn't even do that.
Well, if we had more time, if we hadn't screwed up the Skype connection at the very beginning, we probably could have spent time. But you pre-promoted it on the air. You got several 100,000 people out there listening. If they're there, they're there. If they're not, they're not. I don't. My ego does not need a blowjob to get into any of the rest of this stuff. I've spent 50 years in broadcasting, radio, TV, whatever, and I've had a very, very nice career. I've been written up in a lot of periodicals, newspapers, and I've been on networks, and people have loved me. And there's been, fortunately, a smaller number that think I suck. So, okay, let's move on and get on to something that's really substantive.
100,000 people, that would be bigger than a wet dream for me. I mean, actually, one of the great things about this online media, Brian, is we literally are just trying to grow to a base of 500 to 1,000 listeners, and just a base that small with internet media is enough to generate a supportable income for an online radio station. Believe it or not, a lot of people are shocked by that, but the way interaction goes with online media, you're able to at the same time and give them services they're interested in. It's a completely different model with online radio.
I totally get it, and I admire you for the investment of your own funds and any of the money you stole from that last savings and loan to outfit your studio and and all the rest of that business. I'm kind of amazed how the media has progressed over the years since my first radio show in 1965, and then all the backlash to cable. And what do you mean? I'm going to have to pay for something? I get it for free. And now who doesn't have cable? Who doesn't have satellite? Who doesn't have? I don't know about XM Sirius. They've had their problems.
They were there for a while. There was a time of about 10 years where they were the only alternative, but. In terms of cost and budgeting and everything, the internet may be their downfall unless they make a good transition, which I struggle to say, but really Clear Channel is probably doing the best thing with iHeartMedia.
Oh, you mean go bankrupt? Yeah, I think they're doing a great job.
See, that's the juggling act that old-fashioned radio is having to take right now, is like, how do we make this transformation, but at the same time, how do we make any more money with these budgets we have?
Well, I can assure you that Clear Channel and Columbus, Cumulus, and all these, the big owners, are where they are financially and ratings-wise because of the number of times they've shot themselves in the foot with crappy programming, with voice tracking and so on. There's no more personality, at least on the music stations, FM and so on. And of course, AM is nothing for music any longer, and they didn't keep up with that technology. But it was all about saving money, making money, and nothing about serving the audience and allowing people to go on the air with creativity and ingenuity and get close to their listeners. Why? Well, because we can't have a personality on the air that's so tight with the audience that if he does something we don't like and we want to fire him, then all the agencies, sponsors, and the audience are going to get pissed off and they're going to listen to us anymore. So let's get a nice homogenized show that says nothing about nothing. And here's the third of one in a row. Kind of
when I was at the old-fashioned antique modulated station about 4 or 5 years ago and was there for quite some time, one of the most difficult things that was both irritating and dangerous is that when certain topics came up, I was told I couldn't say specific words, and if I did mention specific words, then I had to use specific phrases immediately after that. And then there were certain topics we could not speak at all about. Number one, because the being afraid of advertiser backlash, but also community backlash. And I know a lot of folks are thinking, oh, you're talking about anything to do with the issues of Islam or Muslims or illegal immigration. One of the biggest, you could not speak at all about, turned out to be bicyclists. Here in Columbus, there was an edict that do not talk about bicyclists, because with the OSU campus, there was always issues of radical, regressive bicyclist coalition yelling about people not following the rules, whereas they weave in and out of traffic. But if we were not allowed to speak on that topic, because on a couple of occasions when hosts did that, the bicyclist crowd in Columbus actually came to the station to protest.
Well, I think that's what you're going to be seeing more and more and more of as things get more and more and more politicized and polarized. That just as you saw out in California, demonstrations where property damage was getting out of control, and the cops just stood there with their thumbs in an unnatural orifice, waiting for everything to just go by. There weren't arrests made. There was nothing. And once demonstrators, once people with short fuses, once people that are eat up with prejudice and narrow minds and so on find out that they can get away with that type of conduct with impunity, then you're just going to get more of it. And then eventually the people whose property is being damaged or person is being damaged, they're going to start fighting back, and pretty soon the guns will come out. And you're looking forward to some pretty hot summers and falls and winters and springs as this thing continues. Now, you see the YouTubes you see the videos on Facebook all the time. I saw one this morning about a woman who went into a store where she did some shopping. They had a Confederate flag hanging on the wall, and she went absolutely hysterical.
Did she go batshit crazy?
Oh, it was unbelievable. They called me a blah blah blah, and oh, this is the mean people that were fighting. It was snowflake trigger all over the place, and that type of thing is contagious. Because the people who are sociopathically inclined to do that type of thing are going to be encouraged to do it. The people who haven't gotten enough attention when they were children, they're going to do it because no one's going to come over there and smack them.
I have been saying that with this far left, the people, the Antifa or Antifas, they're called, or using the black bloc tactics, they are raising the things to a level that potentially, if a trigger's pulled on these groups, could engage in. We've seen what was done in shutting down freeways in major cities, and some of these violent things like going on in Berkeley, or the attitude that you described seen in the store with the Confederate flag. We're at a dangerous point where I think these groups could be triggered to begin taking action on a national basis if who's ever their puppet master actually strings. And if you've been following my paranoid posts on Facebook for the last 8 months, I've been warning about that. Am I delusional or not?
Well, you're only delusional to the people who are suffering cognitive dissonance overload. I mean, it's really at the heart of everything. You've got society breaks down into basically three sections. You've got people who are intelligent and aware, and they can be open-minded and they're willing to learn. Of course, within that section are also people who refuse to learn, but those are people who are suffering from the epidemic of aggressive ignorance. They don't know, they don't want to know, they don't want to be told. They're perfectly comfortable in their mental Barco lounger, continuing with their prejudice and their belief system. Then below that are your people who are congenitally stupid, and it doesn't matter. Even a brain transplant would not solve that problem, whereas the ignorant people could be cured if they just sit still long enough to listen. But even people who are just starting to consider political realities and human relations and the way things work and why they are, you don't go into it, once you're old enough to do that, you don't go into it with with an empty closet. You know, you're going to take a certain amount of prejudice, a certain amount of your learning and life experience in there with you. And when someone steps up and tells you everything you've ever believed, or the vast majority of it, absolutely wrong, that's when your cognitive dissonance steps in and sets up this brick wall. And unless you really work at keeping that down or dissembling it when it happens, knowing that there could be something to the fact that what you believe is not right, and then listen to the evidence and make a judicious decision accordingly. That's all part of individual responsibility, which of course is something else that's going the way to the dodo bird and dinosaurs and decent radio. So that's the deal.
It's almost reached the point of the equivalency of going into the middle of Syria, going into a ISIS town and trying to convert them to Christianity. It's almost that difficult.
Yeah, well, I think that's, you're right, and I think that's a good extreme case of that. These people have been, it's not brainwashed, that's a nice convenient term you can throw out there, and maybe it's as good as any, but they have been taught, look, someone famous, someone very intelligent, which means, well, me, said something that is impossible to argue with. First, we will only cherish what we love. We will only love what we know, and we will only know what we're taught. So when you get to the end of that and you say, okay, that sounds reasonable, that sounds logical, that sounds applicable, what have I been taught? And who taught me? Well, all the statist union members that occupy public school teaching positions, they taught you for most of the time. Then you had the statist collectivists on TV that were doing what used to be called the news. They're teaching you. Then you've got your sitcoms and your movies and your books and magazines. Anytime, I mean, if you think about the relationship to your teacher in a classroom, you're sitting in the class with 25 other losers, you know, and you're up in front of the class is some person with an agenda, allegedly with a degree, that's supposed to be instructing you in a particular discipline. Well, if that particular, what he's telling you or she's telling you is bullshit of the highest order, then, and you're sitting there, okay, well, I guess I got to take the test, you know, what's good, what's bad. Then you're going to conform to that belief system because you're too young and stupid, you're too young and ignorant. It's, you know, to be able to make a judicious decision, an objective analysis of the information that you're being taught. So by the time you get to be 17, 18, 20, 25, 30 years old, you're in this pattern of just being a giant sponge. And you sit there and you watch your sitcoms and you watch the late night talk shows, and you, of course, you avoid the news because that's boring, and you know, so, which is just as well because it's all a bunch of crap anyway. And you don't read books and you don't investigate other people because it's boring. And you just
Brian, people won't even read a web post or a web story that's more than 500 words long. If they have to scroll down more than 2 sections on a browser, they give up. I mean, let alone reading a book.
Dirk, I have seen it happen with email. In business cases, you respond to somebody's question in an email, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you do that, and I'll wait for that so that I can do this. And you'll get a note back saying, yeah, you go ahead and do that.
Yeah, they look at the subject header and they make conclusions as to what the entire content on a post is all about. And I'm sick and tired of arguing with people that they make an entire, 2-paragraph Facebook response to a post. And if they had just read the article, they would have seen that whatever they wrote is nonsense and doesn't relate to what the article's really about.
Well, that's why I say you circle back to where we were at the beginning and say there's just no point in bothering. There's the life is too short, and there are better things to do, fun things to do. You can go play with your wife or husband. You can go out bass fishing. You can do tequila shooters. I mean, there are any things that are much more enjoyable and productive in some cases than sitting there arguing with someone who really doesn't want to listen. I got to a point, and thanks to talk radio mostly, that once a conversation evolves to a point, whether it's online or talk radio or at a cocktail party or barbecue or whatever, once the conversation with the other individual evolves to the point where the other person starts calling you names, then you win. Because that person just told you that as far as intellectual ammunition is concerned, his brain just went click. he's got nothing left to say.
What do you?
He can't stand
we've
up to you
dealt
on the
with
basis of
we've dealt with during the Obama administration, even before that, the left's typical comeback is they'll pull out the Nazi card or the racist card. My attitude since 2008, 2009, when I really started focusing more on the libertarian point of view and analyzing the tactics and methods of the left, was to literally fight fire with fire. So if you're going to call me a Nazi, I'm calling you a Stalinist. Is that really a good tactic to use with these people, just to say I can dish it out, but still the discussion's over? But if they're going to end it with the Nazi comment, why not at least get a poke in from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that worked for a while in third grade, but I don't. And unless you've got just some magnificent zingers, and at the same time have a magnificent audience, it's really kind of just a time. If it's honest cognizant dissonance, and you've got something to work with, someone who essentially has the intellectual curiosity to want to pursue the subject to another level, where they're going to take in more information that can be ingested and
right.
And all of that's needed to get it to a point where they can absorb it and then reject it if you wish.
Yeah.
I mean, got freedom of choice, but that's the there may be some internal satisfaction of being able to tell somebody, where to go and how to get there and all the rest. But
the thing I've discovered is, because with those on the left that are going to do that exact same thing, pull out every word in the book, when you respond in a manner, it at least shuts them down.
Not really. That's not been my experience at all.
It hasn't.
That's why I say unless you've come up with those one or two one-liners that absolutely render your opponent mute, then all you're doing is you're volleying. It's racquetball. It's badminton. It's tennis. It just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and somebody finally says screw it and leaves.
So don't engage with that unless you have some 144 character nuclear bomb responses.
Right. But what are you trying to accomplish? Yeah. It's easy enough. They're going to destroy themselves with their own ignorance, in a matter of time anyway. I'm more interested in finding people who would like to have an interesting conversation about a particular subject that's going to enlighten them to the futility of things like politics and so on. You talk about the left, and I say, yeah, you're right. They got some real winners over there, but the right's got their own problems. The right's got their own people.
Mm-hmm.
The right's got Bill O'Gasbag was a great example of that. As long as he was preaching his doctrine, everybody was supposed to sit there and listen and think he was great and so on. But God forbid anybody should come in there and say, well, Bill, I think you're wrong on that. And boom, get verbally trampled. And that's not so that type of conduct, that type of dealing with people like that is not exclusive to the left.
With Bill being gone, is that good or bad for Fox News? And how does it change things?
Well, it depends on which side of the checkbook you're on. If you're if you're one of the Fox family, the folks who write the checks and make the money and all the rest of that, then there may be some pain for a while, depending upon those clients, those advertisers who left. But the fact was is those advertisers didn't leave Fox; they just didn't run on Bill O'Gasbag's show anymore. That, number one. Number two, from a viewer's standpoint, I'm enjoying the hell out of
the talk.
The talk. The duck.
No, the tuck.
The tuck, right? I think Carlson he's brilliant. And not only is he brilliant, not only does he mostly keep the opposing guest focused on the embarrassing question that he asked them, but you walk away with the fact that he is of singular purpose. The problem with O'Gasbag was, I remember one of the interviews he did with Trump was, well, what are you going to do about this? And Trump said, well, I think I'm going to do that. And Bill said, oh, no, you can't do that. You got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. He said, oh, okay, that's right, because he's the president of the United States and you're not, and you're going to tell him how to live his life and run the country and so on, because after all, you're Bill O'Gasbag with 3 million listeners for 15 years and so on. It's well, what's the point? This is all just unnecessary contentiousness where two people going back and forth and doing, and what are we accomplishing? I mean, when we talk about left and right, and libertarians and governance and so on, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the goal here? You know, are we trying to find out what's the? I'm not particularly interested.
It's
in
become like a
discussing,
sporting event. I mean, literally, the goal seems to be to win the game or win the quarter that day.
If that's your hobby, then have at it. You know, I'm going to go fishing. You know, then it's just me and some slimy thing below the surface and how I can fool them into biting the hook. You know, actually, that's not really a whole lot different than politics. But the point is that I guess I got tired of trying to convince somebody else or a lot of somebody else's in the radio audience that what I was saying or the person I was quoting or whatever was right, was correct, was accurate, was worthy, and they weren't. Because that's the reaction. Either you loved what I was saying, what I was repeating, what I was quoting, a guest who I had on, or you didn't. And if you didn't, then everything I did was wrong. You know, and eventually you'd stop listening. The point now to me is taking libertarians as just over getting across the entire spectrum is I gave up on libertarians.
I believe. I mean, the Libertarian Party has always been, in quote, a crisis of some sort, and really, it's basically not getting their act together. But in this last election cycle, we are really, I think, seeing a tipping point in the Libertarian Party. We've got extremists on the right in some measure and extremists on the left in some measure, both battling for control of the party. I mean, you just had someone pretty important, I can't remember his name, come out in the last few days and just he insinuated that our soldiers were nothing but mass murderers.
Well, which was an interesting concept and it can be an interesting conversation. But for me, and the things I'm writing for Lou Rockwell or another book that I'm working on is looking past that. You know, Henry David Thoreau made a great quote. He made a lot of great quotes. But one of my favorites is, "I wasn't born to be forced. So why am I voting for anybody that's going to occupy a position or positions that are singularly created to force me to do or not do things that they consider important?" This is the inconsistency of libertarians. Libertarians were, we're champions of self-ownership. We believe in self-ownership. We believe in small government, you know, and so on. Okay, well, if you believe in self-ownership, that means that the only government that I need is me. I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. You know, if I decide I want to eat glass for lunch and kill myself, but what business is that of anyone's? You know, it's certainly not the government doesn't have a stake in that, other than the fact that they'll lose a taxpayer, and I make sure that I give them as little money as possible, so there's not going to be any great loss as far as that's concerned. But if you're going to say that limited government, that the individual is sacrosanct, that the individual is the center of your universe, that you own you, no one else owns you, then how can limited government be anything? Limited government can't be anything other than evil. George Washington famously said, "Government is not. It's a dangerous servant, a horrible master. Government is evil." You know, Lord Byron, you know, with his business with Acton, rather, with the power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if government is corrupt and power corrupts absolutely, then how can you ever expect a government to be anything other than corrupt?
Now, you had a post on Facebook talking about this issue, and you did, because a lot of people are going to go, well, that's anarchy, but you addressed that in the post. How is that? Is that not anarchy, or how could we avoid anarchy?
Anarchy is what I and other people refer to as an emotive code word. It is an emotive code word based on the ignorance of people to understand what the true meaning of anarchy is. Anarchy has come to mean, through misuse and misapplication and therefore acceptance, just like ain't, you know, is in the dictionary. Anarchy, you know, people running around shooting and killing and doing whatever, and so on. Right. And anarchy means absence of a ruler. Absence of a ruler does not mean that peace and harmony will reign, because we got rulers out the kazoo, for crying all night, and look what we've got. Right. we got riots and mayhem going on all over the place. The same thing with laws. Laws are nothing more than a bunch of individuals getting together and deciding that it's going to be wrong if you do whatever this law prohibits. Well, who the hell are they to say that owning a gun or smoking marijuana or drinking booze or whatever is? You get into all these sidebar straw man arguments about how bad it will be if this doesn't exist and that doesn't exist. But if you stop and think about it, and say, well, there's 330 million people in this country. There's 535 or so people in Washington, and they're sitting there telling the rest of us what to do.
But I mean, if this country moved to that model, there would be very violent occurrences because people. Don't you think people would then separate into quote unquote tribes of their own?
What'll be wrong with that?
But would the violence that would go with that in people separating into those tribes, would that be worth it?
Well, first of all, I don't know why people would, if they separated into groups of like-minded individuals, would somehow be violent. I think they'd be pretty comfortable. They'd be pretty happy that they had gotten to a point where they didn't have to worry about the guy next door or across the street because everybody thought the same.
Well, but there would be some groups that wanted to claim an area, and there might be other groups that also wanted to have that area.
That's possible. That's possible. That's all possible. Just like today. The same thing happens today. That doesn't necessarily mean that by removing those things that have caused that type of reaction in other people is going to exist when you remove those things that have caused that reaction in other people. I don't imagine that, at least when I look at pictures that go back to the 1950s and 40s and so on, you look at the Middle Eastern cities that we bombed the crap out of, they were looked like they were having a pretty good time. They're all, dressed nicely. They had cars and restaurants and probably bowling alleys and movie theaters and universities and so on. And then because somebody decided that they wanted to put a pipeline down Main Street, well then boom, all the excrement hit the rotating air distribution device, and now we're bombing people and so on. One of the greatest things.
Do you think that was the intended consequence of the powers that did that, or was that just something that just happened?
Well, it's like Uncle Tom's Cabin. It wasn't like Topsy and just grewed out of nothing. It was these things all have a cause, and what our government wants you and everybody listening to believe is that we have spent $1 trillion a year bombing the hell out of brown people in other countries, and sending as they say, the blood and treasure of our American fighting men and women over there to die while they're killing other people, in order to keep us safe and to keep us free.
Now, you and I
really?
Believe, and probably, I think from our discussions, agree with Dr. Paul on removing U.S. forces from their international deployment. How far should we pull back from that completely, or what do you think?
Well, I think the question is the question that elicits a more cognitive answer is, why are we there?
Right.
700 and some odd bases all around the world with battleships and military men and bombs and guns and so. Why? Where did it ever develop from a constitutional source that the United States was somehow responsible for injecting itself, in other countries' affairs? I mean, look at it. Just look at it. Here's a perspective. Just look at all the conversation that's been taking place over the past several weeks. All the heat and humidity generated from the mainstream media over this business of the Russians are interfering in our elections. Oh my God, the Russians are interfering in our elections. They hacked into our elections. Well, let's put aside for a moment the fact there's no proof of that. Let's just remember the fact that they hacked into the DNC and came up with Podesta's emails that revealed more crap and garbage about Hillary Clinton, the election, Bernie Sanders, and so on than you can shake a stick at. That's gotten zero coverage.
When it comes to that, if it was the Russians or if it was their mother, it really doesn't matter. But like you just said, it's the fact that that information was true. It showed that they were purposely trying to destroy the Sanders campaign, and it proved the collusion with the media. But that very weekend, we're speaking with Brian Wilson, by the way, the Libertas Media Project. I do have to say that occasionally, Brian, okay?
Yeah, great. Me too. Yeah, and I'm speaking with Dirk. Well, who cares? But yeah, let me the final point. You're right on all of that. But the final point on this business of all this convulsing and kvetching about the Russians interfering in our elections, I'm monumentally disappointed that no one who has had access to a microphone and a camera has stood up and said, well, you know, boys and girls, have you ever taken a look at how much interference our government does in other people's elections? Would you like to go back to the elections in Israel where President Obama sent $250,000 of U.S. taxpayer dollars over there to screw up his reelection?
And then he sent his own former campaign people, his pollsters, his marketing people, he sent them physically over there to work with the NGOs and the opposition party.
Well, that's my point. You know, and it's not just there. You go to Ukraine, you can go to Japan,
Russia,
China, blah, 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 Russian elections and so on, all over the place. So what is this righteous indignation that, you know, somehow our elections are sacred, but we can screw around with everybody else's in order to get our guy in there?
We've got a 70-year track record of interfering with government and elections worldwide.
We have a 200-year track record of war.
That is true.
The idea that we had any business, we got all the big wars in mind. They haven't had anything to do with, well, the first one, Revolutionary War. Yeah, that might have had something to do with us gaining our, quote, freedom.
Was that the only legitimate war we were ever involved in?
Well, I think that to the extent that individuals want to throw off the yoke of tyranny, for the sake of freedom, yeah, I think that's okay. If that's what's decided. The interesting part about the Revolutionary War is that what was there? A third of the people fought, a third of the people were against it, and a third of the people didn't give a damn.
I wasted 20 minutes of people's time talking about that just 2 weeks ago. Everybody thinks that everybody wanted to go with the revolution, but it was a very small minority of people that were actively engaged in overthrowing British rule.
Tell it to the soldiers that couldn't get socks during the winter in Valley Forge. All of their friendly citizens that were there to help them out. It's really an interesting concept, an interesting struggle, and so on. But World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Afghanistan. What the hell are we doing there? Where is freedom? And we send our regular there so they can protect us and keep us free and the home of the brave. What the crap? Have you ever seen the Afghan Navy? It sunk last week. They lost a rowboat and an Evinrude, I think it was. That was it, a couple of rifles. But we're over there for 7, 10, 12, 13, whatever the hell it is, bombing the crap out of people. And this business about children and so on. Oh, they went in there up a nightclub and all these great young people and children and mothers and old people were killed. Really? You ever see what our drones have been doing? And what have we gotten? You got a $700,000 drone that takes out some guy and his nephew. Oh, and 9 people, men, women, and children who were there for a wedding.
Well, we were told for years all we have to do is get Osama bin Laden. If we get him, then we win and it's over. And that really proved it.
Well, that's the thing. I thought, the business of elections and elected officials and so on is. I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, if bullshit was poetry, politicians would be Longfellows. There's no two ways about it. It's all these guys do. And elect me and I'll set you free and I'll get the budget balanced and I'll do away with exploding dandruff and bad breath. And it's just it's asinine. And what's the only thing that's more asinine than that is the people who believe it. And they get passionate about it, because this is their guy, and he's going to fix everything, and then he doesn't. And it's the greatest pictorial analogy to that everybody, especially in your position, should have on their websites, is that great cartoon of Charlie Brown and Lucy and the football.
Yeah.
That says everything you have to know about politics.
And that, Brian, would be a meme image, and that would actually be something that people paid attention to and shared around on Facebook, because we've learned from our research that when we post an image meme with a message or a story, that gets more likes and gets more shares than any link we would put to a very detailed summation of some event going on. We've become... We literally just want everything in 144 characters, but a meme image of the football being pulled away would get more response than a detailed philosophical discussion of that analogy.
Well, that all goes back to the addiction that we have come to have as a country to instant gratification. We don't want to invest any more time, effort, money than we have to in order to get the satisfaction, the kick that we want. I think it all started with the microwave oven. I mean, once we had the microwave oven, then people stopped cooking, and just if it can't be zapped.
Now, I would say it goes all the way back to the Rolling Stones, and I can't get no satisfaction.
Yeah, well, I think the microwave beat the Rolling Stone, and it's probably the same thing. But plus the fact there were an awful lot of people who like country and western didn't even hear the Rolling Stone for years. There's all that. But
now you were in radio though back in the day. Was not I can't get no satisfaction. Wasn't satisfaction also a top 40 hit? So even the masses heard that song.
Oh, yeah, it was a big hit. Yeah, they got a lot of airplay. I say. Played it when it was new. It was that was good stuff. But from a societal standpoint, like you say, 144 characters and Facebook and it's amazing the places where you come up for the proofs and supports for that. I found out from Mrs. Wilson shopping the other day. She was looking for a can of Hormel's corned beef hash. And she found it, lower shelf, stuck in the back, covered with dust and spider webs and so on.
but still fresh out of the can.
The manager comes up to her and asks, one of the monumentally stupid questions. Do you buy that stuff? Well, yeah. Get this fried up nice and crisp in a frying pan. Throw an egg on the top.
Do you sell this stuff?
Well, we're not going to be carrying it anymore.
Oh, really?
Why aren't we? Well, because people aren't buying it, and people aren't buying it because people don't cook.
Right.
You've got to open a can, empty the can, put it in a frying pan, put it on the stove, heat up the stove, go through all this bull crap to that. Just, if I can just peel back the label, stick it in the microwave, boom, 30 seconds, 1 minute later, I'm good to go. Great, let's do that. There you go. Now we got a great dinner. Now we'll buy the hell out of that, and you can just look at the freezer section of your local grocer and see where is the great variety and choice. Frozen foods, frozen pizza, frozen mushrooms, ice cream needs to be frozen. But, things like that. It's really rather astounding, and I find it interesting to be able to sit back and observe society more from the standpoint of these monstrous changes that have taken place, the ones that are in the process of taking place, and what's giving them the impetus to do so. What's the driving force on that? It's really incredibly fascinating. That's why something like the reasons why, and they aren't reasons, they're ideas, they're hypotheses, they're suspicions as to why Comey got fired. I mean, you see these people, especially on the weekends, you hear these news shows, they'll bring in somebody, a former assistant pant washer to the Obama administration during the first 6 months is here, and he'll be speaking authoritatively on the business of Comey being fired. He doesn't know his ass from his elbow. He's just got his own suspicions, his own prejudice, and he's going to do that. And you have somebody from the other kind saying the same thing. And why do we care? Has your life changed one whit since Comey was fired? One whit. Has anything about your life changed since Comey was fired? But yet, that's all you see on the tube. That's all they're talking about. And that's because of the myopia that exists between the media axis between Washington, D.C. and New York. You ever notice that the news anchors never get really excited about anything like weather unless it's going to hit New York? 18 million people are in the path of this massive storm. But
well, and then they stoop to
who
things
deal
like
with
the
tornadoes all
Weather
time, they'll
Channel.
sue them.
I mean, a few years ago, the Weather Channel, they started naming and declaring their own storms, which is just fiction. I mean, there was no, and people fall for that stuff, Brian. If, for example, the National Weather Service names a storm, which isn't an official name, and then 4 inches of snowfall on Boston, it's a national emergency, and even my wife here in Columbus, Ohio, spends the entire weekend watching Weather Channel people stand in 2 or 3 inches of snow and say this is a crisis.
I'll have to have a word with your wife. But it is fascinating, but yet that is where the prurient interest comes in, that people are going to be more attracted to watching a house on fire, a car wreck on the side of the road, somebody's boobs, being flashed on TV. So
well, there's some things that are worthwhile, Brian.
Well, there is that. But I mean, I've often been fascinated by people driving down the road, and all of a sudden you're in this massive backup because somebody pulled over to the shoulder of the road to change a tire.
Yeah.
And they say, you know what? You can go to YouTube and see plenty of videos on how to change a tire. I mean, it's really not difficult, and it's not something that we really need to have a 5-mile backup of everyone going from 70 down to 15, to watch somebody out there struggling with his jack off. But that's just a fact of human nature, and that will never change unless you make a concerted effort intellectually to get past it. But that's why they do it. That's why they have anchors or field reporters walking around in supposedly snake-infested waters, or that great Dan Rather shot during whatever hurricane it was, where he's hanging onto the lamppost.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
can you spend a little more time with us, or do you got an appointment with a fishing pole?
Well, I don't know. Do you mean there's still people listening?
I'm not sure, but
sit there and say
for our own self-gratification, do you want to do another segment?
Oh, that's fine.
Because I still want to. I want to talk about your book and a little bit more about what you're doing with the with your other online project and that little podcast that you do with Judge Napolitano.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I'm here.
We're speaking with Brian Wilson. It is The Hunt for the Truth on News Talk 614.com, and we're going to be right back and give us about 4.5 minutes. I have to go poopy. Brian has to go get something to drink. I don't know if that's alcoholic or not.
Too much information.
Oh, all right. Well, let's get into that. And your calls, too, if you'd like to interact. 805-727-DIRK. That's 805-727-DIRK. The Hunt for the Truth on News Talk 614.com.
Dirk Thompson.
Love your show. I think you rank up there higher than Glenn Beck, and he's pretty high on my list, about even with Rush.
Now, see, that's just silly talk right
No,
there.
it is not.
Brian Cranston for the Will Rogers Institute.
There are lots of things in life that can take your breath away. Your first love, seeing the world. But life isn't the only thing that can take your breath away. Asthma is responsible for more sick days and ER visits than any other condition.
For your free booklet, visit WRInstitute.org or call toll-free 877-957-7575 and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
There are many good reasons to be left breathless. Help make sure asthma isn't one of them.
The Will Rogers Institute, since 1936.
And you will undoubtedly hear it many more times as the days go by. Now, just in case you're hazy on exactly what it means, let me give you a rough idea. It means that the cost of your clothes and food has gone up to a point where the family budget has become somewhat strained. Well, that's one of those things, and you can't be expected to increase the family income. But there are some things you can do to help. For instance, take better care of your clothes. When you come home from school, change into old clothes before you go out to play. Take care of your health, because doctors and medicines are expensive. Eat well, but don't waste. Take your full share, but eat all you take. Try not to ask Mother and Dad to buy you things you don't actually need. Make the best and the most of what you've got. Try to be more than usually careful of your school equipment, such as paper, pencils, and so forth. Make them last and go as far as you possibly can. Remember that all members of a family must pull together at a time like this. So do your share.
Hi, I'm Val Dolcini, the administrator of the USDA Farm Service Agency in Washington, D.C., with an important reminder for livestock producers. January 30, 2015 is the deadline to apply for assistance if you suffered qualifying disaster-related livestock or grazing losses between October 1, 2011 and December 31, 2014. The Livestock Indemnity Program and the Livestock Forage Program were reauthorized by the 2014 Farm Bill to provide relief to ranchers impacted by drought, blizzards, and other natural disasters. You have just a few more days until that January 30 deadline to visit your local Farm Service Agency office to file an application for payment and compensation. Learn more on the web at disaster.fsa.usda.gov or call your local FSA county office. Don't wait. Act today.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the USDA Farm Service Agency.
Needs the comfort and inspiration of religious faith, for it is faith which helps hold our families together, builds moral and spiritual character. And today, perhaps more than ever before, there's a need to turn to a way of life based on the enduring principles of religion. There are a great many programs of religious nature on NBC Radio, which you'll enjoy hearing this Sunday. Among them, The Art of Living, the National Radio Pulpit, Eternal Light, the Lutheran Hour, the Catholic Hour, and the Hour of Decision conducted by Billy Graham. These are but a few of the broadcasts that will bring you inspiration and comfort not only this Sunday, but on the Sundays to come. Of course, the Easter message will be the highlight event this week. We know you'll enjoy hearing them as a supplement to your visit to the church of your choice. And when you do go to church this Sunday, take the whole family with you.
For almost 2 centuries, Americans have enjoyed the valuable privileges of freedom. Now, freedom needs each American to dedicate himself to its preservation. We must not allow our liberties to be endangered by neglect of our duties as citizens. During this year of rededication, join with your fellow Americans in reaffirming the principles on which this country is founded and the safeguarding of those principles. Make it your business to see that federal, state, and local governments are conducted honestly. Help to maintain the good morale of your sons and daughters in the armed forces. Learn the facts about all candidates and issues. Then vote for the one you believe in. Make the most of every minute on your job. Produce as much as you can, and thus increase our military and economic strength. Work for better schools and a better community. Guard your American heritage of freedom. It needs you.
Your freedoms, your liberties are being taken away. Please welcome Dirk Thompson's Hunt for the Truth.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as bad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!" I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as bad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change."
How many stations does this go on?
Get mad.
67.
I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta. We're not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil prices. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, "I'm as bad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore."
Designs, the man that knows everything. It's the Hunt for the Truth with Dirk Thompson. Newstalk614.com, the Team Trump Radio Network. By the way, it is our spring share-a-thon, so make sure you, as you are listening or watching on Facebook Live or Live, and the new Shoutcast stream, you can learn more about that by going to our Facebook, Newstalk614.com. A lot of folks don't want to stare at their phone or have their phone or their smart device tied up and trying to watch on Facebook Live or YouTube. Actually got just an audio feed of what, believe it or not, is a radio program. So there's really no need for you to stare at your phone. I recommend hook your device via our audio and actually try to do that while you're driving. What? There? Oh, don't do that. But you can Bluetooth like we do here whenever one of the other shows is on, like the Dano show or Steve Cannon, Boom Boom Cannon. He's back in Columbus every night at 7:10 p.m. Bluetooth, smart TV, probably hooked in. And then you get a wonderful sounding near FM stereo quality. They're in mono, not in stereo yet, but maybe we'll do surround sound. But yeah, it's like Come on, I barely got this thing working. Don't make me do surround sound. Phone number is 805-727-DIRK, but it's the share-a-thon, so while you're consuming this media, click on share. No money, just sharing. Brian Wilson is our guest today from the Libertas Media Project and the Judging Freedom podcast. Good to have you back, Brian. Real quick, before we get into your new book that's out, tell folks a little bit about Judging Freedom, and more importantly, what's behind Libertas Media Project, and how did you get going, and why are you living in the woods?
Well, that's great. I hope everybody brought a lunch. Well, first, as far as Libertas Media Project was concerned, it started about 6 years ago. The original idea was to call into one place people who were doing things like you're doing, or Lou Rockwell is doing, or Jim Bovard is doing, or Tom Woods is doing, or all these different people who are doing things to expand the information base in a compelling way, to get people to think, to analyze and to question their own belief system and authority and everything else. So that was the idea. And several people contributed some nice chunks of money to make it technically possible. And then I discovered that all these people that I wanted to bring into the big tent weren't particularly interested in bringing one into the big tent. They were happy with their own damn tent. So I said, all right. I already spent the money. There's
so much separation online with people that have the same thoughts, but like you just said, they just want to do their own little thing, and they don't really want to get together as a community. So many times I've tried to put together a little online confab with people, and it's like, oh, I'm busy, I can't do that, but then I'll see them on Facebook during that time period doing post after post after post. So it's like, oh, so you were really busy just vomiting on Facebook.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there are so many alternatives now that to try and do it in an organized fashion, you have to convince the individuals involved that it's herding cats. Let's just put it short. It's just like herding cats.
Took the words out of my mouth.
I kind of gave it up as that being the point of the project, and kept the name and the website and some of the other stuff to press on and to bring in people who with whom I could speak about compelling topics that pointed in the same direction that Libertas was supposed to do. And so I would have Walter Williams on. I'd have Lou Rockwell on. I'd occasionally get Ann Coulter, to come in and chat. People like that, and the conversations would run anywhere from 15, 20 minutes to an hour. Because we were just having a good time, and we didn't have to stop to break for anything, and that was the way it went. Somewhere in there, I was still enslaved up in Toledo.
Well, I was just going to say, because even when you were on in Toledo at WSPD, I would iHeartRadio in to listen to you, because I love local radio. You were right here in the state of Ohio, up in Toledo. But you were getting these national voices on your local program, which you really don't get a lot. Is that because a lot of these national voices won't go on these, or do a lot of little baby talk show hosts just not make the effort to try to get these voices on their local programming?
Yeah, well, it's all true, and of course for the publicists and the other firewalls that stand between the producer or the host and the celebrity, the whomever, they have come to realize, and I've heard other people interviewing Lou and Napolitano and people like that. And, I mean, they suck. I mean, they just really suck. When I wrote the Little Black Book on Whitewater, I was on about 115 stations, and I was doing mornings on WRC talk station in Washington D.C. at the time, and I was interviewed in Chicago and New York and other markets. But invariably, the smaller the market, usually the smaller the talent, the smaller the brain, the smaller the preparation, the smaller the curiosity, the smaller everything. So it's got to a point now where, to get somebody like Walter or Napolitano or Annie or something like that is damn near impossible unless you've got 50,000 watts and a heritage call letters behind you. So I had done all that before I came to Toledo. Toledo was kind of like my working retirement. I've been all over the country, San Francisco, Dallas, New York, Baltimore, Washington, Atlanta. And I actually, when they offered me the job, I said to Cassie, my wife, I said, maybe this is it. A nice medium-sized town in middle America where, I can help some people who are trying to climb the ladder by teaching them things that I learned in all these years and all these markets and so on, and maybe raise the awareness level of the audience because they're probably accustomed to hearing these people that have only progressed to a particular point, either intellectually or educationally or professionally or whatever, and show them that there's a bigger world out there.
Now, I don't know how it happened, but somehow I may have been driving through or just online for some reason at the time listening to WSBD, but I actually heard, I believe it was your very first time on the air there, and you did what I thought was brilliant, because one of the things that I used to appreciate about folks like Glenn Beck is they would bring in that entertainment factor that you and I used to have in old classic top 40 CHR radio. You did this entire bit, I believe, if my foggy memory's correct, that you were Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys or something like that.
Well, yeah.
It was hilarious.
Well, it's something that's dogged me, my entire career, and it's just gotten, worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, meaning funnier and funnier as the credulity of that statement became more and more and more accepted. I mean, you wouldn't believe, when I first went on the air on KSFO in San Francisco, and Brian Wilson, and somebody called up, and I never brought it up. Somebody would call up and say, Brian Wilson, are you the Brian Wilson with the Beach Boys? And I said, yeah, but please, I don't do requests. I don't say, on an AM radio station. And but I appreciate you buying the records, and I got the new CD out, Smile. I hope you've had a chance to listen to that. So I think it's a really nice work. And because that Brian Wilson is like 14 months older than I am, and because you
guys look kind of alike too nowadays.
I tell you what, this startled even moi. I went into a local radio station here in Virginia to do a show. I don't know, Dallas, whatever. But my equipment was down for whatever reason, and iHeart had a studio there, and I knew the PD, and blah 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 blah. So I went into it, and they got posters and record jackets and stuff all over the walls and so on. And there was one of the Beach Boys with Brian Wilson in front. I can't remember the album, and I had to do a double take because if you saw my high school picture in the yearbook, and you looked at that, I said, "My God, it's the same guy." I mean, there's no resemblance.
So you've actually resembled him from the time you were young. I thought maybe you just aged into resembling him.
Back in the day, now we don't look anything alike, and I think I came out ahead on that one. But the fact is that there was that, and so when people would say that, I could speak intelligently on it because I was playing their music on the air.
When you did that in Toledo, did you hear any feedback from people that actually thought you were Brian Wilson?
Actually, when people finally realize that I'm not that Brian Wilson, they tend not to bring it up because they look like fools for thinking that Brian Wilson, a guy who could buy you and me with pocket change based on record royalty and so on, would be sitting there squandering perfectly decent, valuable time, spending 3 hours on a talk show in Toledo.
But then again, the real Brian Wilson in the scene industry, he might just be crazy enough to do something like that.
Emphasis on the crazy. Yeah.
Interesting story regarding his whole thing.
I'll tell you one real quick one.
Yep.
We're hosting an event at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. The Giants and everybody play the big football thing. And I don't recall the organization. It doesn't matter. But the Beach Boys were playing there, and it was our job to get out there and entertain the troops for a few minutes and then introduce the Beach Boys. So we're all backstage and blah, 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 and all the commotion that type of thing engenders. And the guys came out, Mike Love, Al Jardine, all the rest of them. They come out, and the promoter, the big promoter, is there, and he said, let me introduce you to the guys are going to be introducing you. And he said, guys, this is Brian Wilson. And I swear, if looks could kill, you'd be talking to somebody else right now. I would have been dead and gone.
Really?
Because there was massive bad blood at the time. They had a lawsuit going on up in Connecticut, Brian Wilson versus, and the thing with Mike Love, it was not good, and they looked at me and they thought it was a joke, that I was trying to pull off a joke. And I said, "Now wait. I said, look, here's my driver's license. Really, Brian Wilson. The middle initial is different. He's 14 months older than I am. I use my real name on the air, so let's not be stupid about it." And everything was okay. About 6 months later, we did another concert down in Baltimore. Same thing, but at least this time they were
prepared for it.
Daggers looked at me, so anyway, all that. But
with that the little bit you did on being Brian Wilson in Toledo, because especially back in the day, Top 40 Radio, Z100 and other stations, PLG, HYT Detroit would engage in these stunts that many were successful. I'm sure you've been involved in some. What is your most memorable one?
Well, there was a time, I don't know that I could pick out one, but there was a time when a jock could pick up the phone and call somebody on the air, live.
Right.
And just, spoof them, troll them on so many different things. And of course, that all went down the tubes pretty quickly. Once people started to complain to the FCC and now you've got to, call the person, get their permission. There's no way to surprise anybody anymore. And
right, unless you very quickly go, this call's being recorded for commercial purposes. It may be re-aired.
Yeah, and that was always a pain in the neck. But the one I recall in Baltimore, we were giving away tickets to some concert. If you were the 10th caller, you'd get the 5 tickets to whatever. And this one called out, you're number 1, number 2, number 3, number guy. Hello, who's this? This is, Shirley Smith. Shirley, you are the 10th caller. Oh, that's great. This is terrific. Yeah, you got the 5 tickets, so congratulations. Oh, this couldn't come at a better time. My aunt used to listen to you guys all the time, but she died. I said, well, it's not our fault. No, she said, but she really would have enjoyed going to the concert and meeting you. And I said, well, I guess you only need 4 tickets then. And people were just there were some people who were just laughing their butts. Other people were just totally outraged. So,
right.
But the woman on the phone didn't. I mean, she was rolling with it. She didn't have any problem. But that's one, because there were others that would take too long to set up, to get to the punchline. But some were really quite good. Probably the most outstanding one was the woman who called me up and shot herself.
Which is in more danger in this current media environment, especially in the radio industry? Which format is most in danger of going away the soonest? Is it music radio formats or is it talk formats?
I don't know. It'd probably be a dead heat. Quite frankly, on one side you've got music, which, and I know I'm out of the demo, but I haven't heard a song recorded in the last 10 years that that I would have given you 5 cents for. I mean, the Beyonce and people like, oh God, who knew people could sing that loudly through their nose? It's just amazing. But
I think that might be grumpy old man demographic
it is.
coming in there.
I want to listen to songs that I can hear the lyrics and understand them and and go along with them and so on. And I know that that my grandparents thought that my parents listening to Frank Sinatra sucked, and my parents thought that listening to Beatles and Elvis and so on sucked, and I thought that and whatever. But of course, being in the business, my tolerance for music was a hell of a lot greater than my father, who was an engineer. So I can enjoy Frank Sinatra, I can enjoy Elvis, I can enjoy the Beatles, I can enjoy, the Eagles, I can enjoy Black Sabbath, I can enjoy, Smashing Pumpkins. I think I got a pretty broad palette of music that I can listen to and enjoy and speak, intelligently. But rap I never got. Once I got past Tone Loc and Funky Cold Medina,
right?
We had him on the show. That was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of chance to meet a lot of the big stars. Michael Jackson and Madonna and Phil Collins. People like that.
And what's interesting, because I had that same experience. I was fortunate enough to actually begin my radio career at Hot Hits 96 WHYT. I'm 22 years old, and I'm meeting people like that. And the big eye-opener to me was, guess what? These are just pretty much, for the most part, normal people.
Yeah, actually, it's. I think it's safe to say that for the most part, the bigger the star, the more enjoyable the time was spent. They had gotten over the ego trips. They had already been to bed with enough boys or girls, or both. So that part was past them. They had gotten out of enough traffic tickets. They had been spiffed enough meals. To realize
and they knew not to give yes or no answers when you're a fascinated air personality and you're so excited you have them in the studio, and then they don't answer questions, and you're like, wait a minute, I sound like I'm talking from experience.
Yeah. Well, it's so for the most part, those were great. The bigger the star, the more enjoyable the interview. Dick Clark, probably the best interview ever. A gentleman. He wrote thank you notes. When we were this was on WABC. Jack Parr, talk about the lower end of the demo, a pioneer in the business. Steve, people like that, Peter, Paul, and Mary, all the rest of that. But then, right on up to, like I say, Madonna. She was a lot of fun. Of course, a lot of that fun took place off the air.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying during commercial breaks, things like that. But
so she was making
those were a hoot. Anyway, but I think that music radio will likely go first, only because there are so many other sources, and I'm using them. I don't want to listen to what some doofus in a control room 900 miles away is going to play next. I want to listen to what I want to hear next.
Terrifying, but yet eye-opening experience for me happened. It was probably 7 years ago. I had made the mistake of going to the evil side of the business and was actually in sales. And this group had called the station to the sales department, and they wanted to know how much it cost to advertise. So being the rookie sales guy, of course, I get that thing to follow up on. And it turned out it was this high school group, and it was a class where students in groups would form little projects and then develop a whole promotions plan, marketing plan, and one of the cores of that was to do a radio campaign for whatever project it was. So they wanted to know how much a commercial was, and I was like, well, I can literally sell you a commercial for $3, or I could sell you one for $150. I ended up talking to the teacher that's leading the course, and I came in and did a presentation on how radio advertising worked. Well, to get to the end of it, at the end of it, I just asked, how many of you actually listen to music radio on the radio? Brian, this is a class of 20 people. It was years ago. One hand went up. One. And I said, where do you listen to the radio? And they said, in my car, because my mom listens to the WNCI Morning Zoo. And I said, so that's your only exposure to actual FM music radio? And they said, yeah, I do all my other listening to what I want to choose online.
Well, that's. I think that was a precursor of what you're going to see. I can make up my own playlist. I don't even need CDs. I can just download everything and put it in the order that I want, or shuffle, or whatever the hell it is, and stick it in the car, or stick it in the phone, or whatever the hell, and just listen to what I want to hear when I want to hear it. I may want to listen to classical. I may want to listen to country. I may want to listen to Fats Mallard and the Bluegrass Valley Boys. I may want to listen to I Want to Whip Your Cow, or punk country, something like that. It just depends on what the mood is at the time, and then you do it. You don't have to wait for some doofus in a control room somewhere to decide that he's going to answer your request or come up on the playlist. So
does radio, or even online music radio, do they need to go back to the times when you had a local person and a specific reason? I mean, and it doesn't have to be a very small. I mean, look at old AM radio. You had CKLW that reached, especially at night, 8, 9, 10 states, even during the daytime, other stations like that. But there was a point in music radio, and it's why I fell in love with the medium, where you didn't necessarily listen to for the music. You listened because you weren't sure what that personality-driven DJ was going to say or do next. The music was secondary. People need to look at going back to formats like that and offerings like that.
Well, I'm sure it's going to sound very old fuddy-duddy and very elitist and very everything else, but I have to say that I don't think there's any talent out there on a comparative basis that can do that.
Well, there's no talent being developed.
Well, then and that's
you walk down the hallway of a major radio station in a market that's got 7, 8 different stations. You walk down the hallway and there's 7 or 8 studios with a computer in it. There's no baby DJs on the weekends or overnights.
Well, and how did we get to that point? We got to that point
Bill Clinton.
Because radio stations, first and foremost, stopped hiring programming people who had the brains, the balls, the experience, whatever, to gently guide their on-air personalities in a way that did not stifle their creativity. Rick Sklar, probably the greatest program director ever at WABC, has hired me and my partner and me to go to WABC back in 1980, the last days of WABC Music Radio. And then he was the guy who developed Cousin Brucey and Dan Ingram and all these giants of radio. But if you look at the people who are recognized as the giant talents in music radio, top 40 radio over the years, and they're all people that you just described. There are people that you had no idea what they were going to do. Now, Larry Lujak on WLS, Dr. Don Rose out in San Francisco, APC in San Francisco, people like that. They were brilliant talents, and it didn't matter about them. It didn't matter about the music. Obviously, you couldn't play, some terrible dirge, but you were really looking forward to the music of the commercials being over, so you're going to hear what whoever this rapscallion was going to do next, and that's the way I patterned my music show. I listened to Dan Ingram, growing up, and had no intention of getting into radio, but when I wound up there through a rather obscene series of events, it was that's what I did. You always tried to do something that the audience did not expect. You're playing White Christmas in July. Okay, everybody does that now, but there was a time that nobody did. I got into some trouble for that, but I also got a lot of comments from the audience as a result. But that's the problem is they haven't cultivated the talent. They wanted somebody to come on the air and say, "Hi, you're listening to WXYZ, in Dirtbag, Illinois. I am, you are, it is, and here's the first of 197 in a row."
And then
that's it.
Replacing the people to stick around rather than just out of anticipation as to what's going to happen next. Now the only way they do that is coming up next at 10:22. That's it. That's
who cares?
That's how they think they're going to get
people. I listen to I got XM. In the truck, and I listen to the 50s station, the 60s station, the 70s station, the 80s station, the 90s station. It's the same thing. The big problem is like with Cousin Brucey, who's got a show. He's trying to do
Cousin Brucey is on XM.
Oh yeah, and he tries.
What channel? I didn't. Frankly, between you and I thought
he's on the 60s channel.
I thought he was dead.
No, he's on the 60s channel. And I worked with him, for a short time before we went to All Talk at WABC. Dan Ingram was doing a show on CBS FM in New York. The problem is that they're doing the same act that they did back in the 60s. It sounds like crap. There's just nothing to it. They didn't progress either.
Or do you think they're being told, or they think they need to still do that simply because?
No, they're hired for their name. And people, they're all going all their. Their audience is all, 45, 55, 65, 70 years old, remembering back in the day and all the rest. But it was during that period of time, right around the time of disco, when disco came in, and top 40 stations didn't know how to compete with it.
Right.
And so they started doing all this crazy stuff, and they hired, I'll tell you this very quickly, the guy that took over as program director right after I went to WABC in 1980, was the 38th person that they interviewed for that job.
Wow.
And there were a whole bunch of reasons why the other 37, didn't get hired, but a fair number of them didn't get hired because they didn't want the job. They didn't want to have to be on the 8th floor of a 45-story building where the top 10 floors were all the big brass of ABC, who didn't have any problem stopping at the 8th floor on the way down to go in and complain about something they heard on the air.
Right.
So, there was that type of thing, but collectively across the board, radio got less and less and less interesting. Not interesting, less and less and less entertaining.
Right.
There was always at least one other station in town that was playing the same music your station was playing, and so people just went back and forth because the personalities weren't there. And as far as your question, which one is going to go first, the same type of thing is happening, I think, in talk radio. I've done shows with Rush. I was a consultant to his television program before it went on the air because I was doing one very similar to what he ultimately did in Atlanta at the time.
I hate to interrupt you, but why did he stop doing the TV show?
Well, he stopped doing the TV show for a couple of reasons. First off was economic, I suspect, because what happened when he announced he was going to do it, all of the big stations in the big markets immediately signed up for it. And then they DB'd it until midnight or 1 o'clock or something like that. Because what they were afraid of was if they didn't take it, one of their competing TV stations would take it and beat the crap out of whatever they had in their prime time slot. So here he had all these affiliates all across the country, major stations, heritage stations, the TV stations, and nobody ever saw the show because it was on at midnight or 1 or 11 or something like that, and people would rather watch Johnny Carson than Rush Limbaugh. So it was after that got so late, nobody would watch. So without an audience, it was near to impossible to get sponsors, and therefore it became a financial burden, for him to jackpot this thing all on his own, despite the fact he was making $10-15 million a year at the time. The other part was that, as anyone who gets into TV will learn, I learned, at the show I was doing for a couple of years in Atlanta, Talk at Night, it was on for 2 hours live, had a little band, volunteered to come in, so on. It's just too restrictive. There's just you don't have the immediate creative outlet that you have in radio. You can't do theater of the mind because you're right there. They're looking at you. Right. You can't create. There was a great Stan Freberg commercial back in the 50s, where he parodied the making of a commercial just with sound effects. You had the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Royal Canadian Air Force towing a giant maraschino cherry that he was going to drop into a mountain of whipped cream that had slid down a mountain into Lake Erie. And it was to the cheering of 10,000 extras. Well, and so he did it. To emphasize the wonderfulness of advertising on radio. And it sounded great. It sounded like, you hear the airplane, you hear the squish of the maraschino cherry. Right. It was great. It was great. So,
and one of the other things about TV is you have to, looking at that damn camera, and because when you're doing creative radio, you're going, as you're moving, you're looking all over the place. And having to always, go back to that camera, it's another thing to distract you and stop. It's one of the debates we're having here, actually, at News Talk 614, is do we even put live video from the studios up on the feeds? I mean, we have to have video of some sort for Facebook and YouTube, but it takes away the theater of the mind that radio is all about. As a professional, in your free consultation opinion, what do you think about that?
Well, it depends on just like anything else, it depends on the personality. I was not a slave to the camera lens when I was doing my TV show. We had 3 cameras, okay, and we had a live audience. Live audience was usually 200 people a night, and I interacted with the audience, I interacted with the guests, and so on.
How'd you sucker that many people coming every night?
Because it was free.
Oh, okay.
And we did a lot of pan shots of the audience. Everybody wants to be on TV.
Of course we did.
So we did that, and we I had Evander Holyfield on. I had Jeff Paul Prudhomme, rest in peace. Had him on. People like that. We had a lot of fun. I had the guys from Living Color on, the Damons and all the rest of that, and it was a fun show. And we didn't knock We didn't knock Johnny Carson's dick in the dirt or anything like that, but we had ratings. We had ratings enough to have advertisers, and that's all the owners were looking for.
Now,
so
we went down this wormhole. So, what do you think with online radio? Should they do the video feed or just?
Yeah, it depends on. Look at Imus. Imus has been on TV for years, doing one of the most boring radio shows in the universe. And he's still on.
And he's still alive.
Still alive too. He's sitting there with his little oxygen thing run up his nose and so on. I don't get it. Of course, I've got a congenital dislike for him because he was my main competition at WABC when he was at WNBC and all the rest of that.
No. You mean WNBC?
Yeah, everybody's got to say that. And I called him anus in the morning and things like that. So it was he wasn't happy about that, but his problem. But anyway, it depends on what you're doing. I think. If I were to advise, as I put myself in the position when I was consulting with Rush, there is no camera. There is no camera unless you want there to be a camera. And when you want to talk to that camera, when you want to talk to that audience, you look at the camera, you maintain your own, you say what you're going to say, you do what you're going to do, and then you're done with it. The rest of the time, it's just like any other live body in the audience or in the studio and sitting there watching you. There is a certain amount of fascination that's always been about radio. To see, how do you do that? Right. How does that happen? Of course, that was back in the days of queuing up records and having cart machines and and all the rest of that jazz. And now it's just you just see somebody's finger move and that's wow, wasn't that exciting?
That's kind of reaffirming to hear because that's what I tell our host is don't play to the camera. I've actually streamed video from the studio for nearly 15 years now, and it's more like kind of like a security cam. You're getting like a sneak peek into what's behind the scenes. And one of the things I enjoy when producing Top 40 Jocks when I was getting started was I was enthralled just by sitting in the other booth, answering phones and making coffee, but watching these people literally perform. And so, at least that's what we're trying to do is not actually, play to the camera, although in breaks, then we'll face the camera and we'll talk to, the 2 or 3 people that are watching.
Well, that's where the fun is anyway. Just like anything else, just like we were talking about personalities, you sit there and you couldn't wait for the commercials and the record to be over so you could hear what the guy was going to do next. Same thing is true. I don't give a damn what you're talking about. I'm waiting for the commercial to come along to see what you clowns do, when the mic is off. And so it's whatever you're comfortable with. If you think the audience is going to be entertaining, if you think you're going to be able to do something compelling that people are going to want to come in and watch, that's the whole idea is you want people to watch and listen and watch and listen and watch. So you give them something to watch. If they don't watch, screw it. What difference does it make? If it's not going to cost you $1 million, to have that thing up there, then what the hell? Why not? It's just an extra added thing for somebody to get involved in. But
what we've learned here is that literally with duct tape and baling wire, just about anybody could do that if they have the time.
But you have to be entertained. You've got to be entertaining.
Yes.
If you're not going to entertain, then don't make a fool of yourself.
We went down this wormhole because you were talking about working with Rush Limbaugh when his program was just getting off the ground. Where were you going to go with that? Because that was very interesting to me.
I think I was talking about the fact that we were talking about radio. I was trying to lead into the fact that when I criticize Rush Limbaugh, I'm not just some idiot who doesn't like his politics or doesn't like his show or anything like that. I know the guy. We've spent quite a bit of time. We did 2 shows together in Atlanta when he was doing those Rush to Excellence tours. He's ridden in my car for an hour when we got stuck in traffic. I saw him, met with him in his office at the Penn Plaza once they moved out of the WABC building. So I got some miles with the guy. And my mileage with him and McLaughlin, the guy who hired him out of Sacramento, and the whole story is that, he's not the same guy who hit the air 20 some odd years ago in New York. He's boring. He's redundant. His ego is unquenchable. When he gets caught with his pants down, I was just being funny. No, you weren't. Your biggest fan is you.
Now,
you assume that everybody in the audience is the same mind.
Is Rush Limbaugh Rush Limbaugh on the Rush Limbaugh show, or is Rush Limbaugh on the show a character, and then there's a real Rush Limbaugh? Because some people are and some people aren't.
Well, and I would say that as far as he specifically is concerned, and all of us in the business are concerned, is that there is essentially a different person coming out of your dashboard than the person who would be at the other end of your bass boat.
Right.
And the reason for that, very simple, is that whether you're talking music radio or talk radio or any format or whatever, if you have a microphone and maybe a camera or not in front of you, you are in showbiz.
Right.
You are an entertainer. I don't give a damn how serious the subject matter is as you're lecturing the audience about the importance of the Bill of Rights, or whether you're teeing up somebody to spoof them, over the 12-second intro to a record. It's showbiz.
Right.
It's showbiz. You're there to entertain. You might inform, you might educate, but your main thing is you have to entertain. And when Limbaugh first got on the air in New York, before he went to his national syndication stuff, he was funny. He was good.
Yep.
You complimented me earlier about mixing entertainment value into talk and so on. Well, that's what you have to do.
Right.
Or that's your primary job responsibility. But then, you got guys like Rush, like Michael Savage, with whom I worked in San Francisco and so on. They start believing their own press. They start believing the great things that everybody is saying about them. And then they just naturally gravitate to an area of all seeing, all knowing. They become the Delphic oracle on everything, about everything. And that line that Rush always uses, with half my brain tied behind my back. Well, that was funny the first maybe 200,000-300,000 times he used it, But now it's a statement of fact. I mean, he really believes that he's quite informed and quite knowledgeable and quite everything. What people don't know is he's got ghostwriters. He's got people feeding him stuff while he's on the air. That he had John, what's his name, from the Wall Street Journal, was his ghostwriter for his first 2 books.
A lot of folks don't recognize that so many people, politicians and talk show hosts and other people in entertainment, these books are not written by them.
Well, that's all the crap that. I mean, what a great bit, though.
Oh, yeah.
Is to sit there and you have somebody ghostwrite the book, you put your name on it, and then because you've got 3 million people watching you on a given evening, you pump that book, and bammo, you're at the top of the New York Times bestseller list in a heartbeat. And, of course, you think you're brilliant. You think you're wonderful. And nobody knows that somebody else actually wrote the stuff, and all you did was collaborate here and there. And that kind of business. And it's but what a great way to make money. And then, of course, you do the altruistic thing. You say all the proceeds are going to go to the Little Sisters of Immaculate Skivvies, down in whatever, something like that. The Ladies of Perpetual Guilt on the other side of town. Those type of things. Oh, isn't that nice? Yada, yada, yada. So it's but it's all a scam. And it's really pretty.
So folks like Rush, and I also think people like they've become parodies of themselves because they're secure in the persona they have, but they've become stale because everybody that listens to them as a fan, they know all the phrases they're going to say, all of the claims that they're going to make, and it's been going on for 10, 15, 20 years, and there's nothing. Are there any national talk show hosts that are fresh and different that are currently syndicated on old-fashioned radio that you're going, hey, that's something different, that's something new that you're aware of?
What is this, a Fargan trick question? Is that what this is?
No, not at all. No, I don't even want you to go there.
No, I have heard, I haven't heard, if they're out there, I haven't heard them because they're not syndicated or they're not publicized or they're not promoting themselves well enough to get there.
The reason I ask, Brian, is because I really haven't found anybody. I mean, someone like Larry Elder, they're kind of a new voice. Salem Meada's got Joe Walsh. Have you happened to catch him?
No, I know Bill. I'd say he used to be good, but eventually they all sink into this morass of self-justification and egocentricity, and they, like I say, they start believing their own ink. I experienced some of that in Toledo because I was, doing afternoon drive, and I'm the program director. So there's nobody in the building, that has the experience that I've got. Not even the general manager. I used to tell Andy, I said, look, how many people in this building ever owned a radio station? No. I did. You haven't even. So when it comes to knowing the business, from a from a hardcore experience. But I have filled in for Michael Smerconish. I filled in for Art Bell. I filled in for Laura Ingraham.
Oh, you filled
Jim
in.
Bohannon.
You filled in for Art Bell.
Oh yeah.
I have to tell, and I talk about it quite frequently, and lately it's because of our duct tape and baling wire setup here. Is if and when a call comes in, I literally have to answer it live, and I love just sharing with people that, you know, when Art Bell, I so much enjoyed his program, especially in the 90s when it was on. And people, I explain how he had all of those west of the Rockies, east of the Rockies.
Yeah,
if I believe
callers,
it, is because he's out in the desert in a trailer, and they didn't have the technology to have a PBX, so he could have one number. So he literally had 4 phone lines going into the trailer. Art Bell, in my opinion, one of the last really, really good talk formats that was done. I mean, now it's become a psychics and ghost story show, so I very seldom listen.
Yeah, it was, and it's a long show to do. It's like 5 hours.
It's almost like having a guest on and then talking to them for 90 minutes straight, Brian.
Yeah, like doing
funny.
So
there's nobody really that you see on the national scene.
Well, I have to say that it's one of those things that when they're on their game, they can be really good. I caught Smerconish the other day. I hadn't listened to him probably for a year or better since I filled in for him. And it was just one conversation with one person on one subject, and he really did a great job. He wasn't driving an issue. He wasn't trying to pound some belief system into somebody's head. He was trying to sterilize the question and the answer so that it fit into the broadest perspective of objectivity, objective analysis. And if you're going to do objectivity, then you check your ego at the door, and you just go in there armed with logic and facts and objectivity and a big bright light, and that's what you're searching. And he did a really good job on that. Excuse me, on previous shows that he did that I heard, he was trying so hard to not be anything.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be a liberal. He didn't want to be a conservative. He didn't understand libertarianism. He was just trying, and it was for crap. It was like eating a bowl of water soup. It was just nothing there. Laura Ingraham, when she's on her game, she can be quite brilliant, quite analytical, but she's also uber Catholic and uber conservative, and those are her issues. And do you remember a guy named Alan Keyes?
Oh yes, yeah.
Let me tell you an Alan Keyes story that will fleece out some of this business. I developed a thing called vacation relief, and I won't get into all of it, but basically I used the technology that was available at the time, an ISDN line, to fill in for talk show hosts all around the country with the studio that I had in one of my converted bedrooms. And I did, in fact, the 7 years that I was on KSFO in San Francisco was all done from that studio. And
you were one of the first people to start doing the remote fill-in like that, weren't you?
I was the first person to do it, and it's amazing how other talk shows go, hey, how exactly can I get into that? What are you, nuts? No, I'm not going to tell you. I don't need any competition. I'm perfectly happy owning the market all by myself. Thank you very much.
Right.
So you do your homework like I did. Anyway, I got a call from the station in Baltimore where Alan Keyes was doing a show. And I didn't live far enough away to be out of the signal, so I said, yeah, I'd fill into him. He was running for president at the time.
Right.
And he was going to be out on tour for that week. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So, I mean, well, I better listen to this guy because I never heard of him before prior to that. And I tuned in on 3 separate occasions during the week prior. And all I ever heard him talk about was abortion. That's all he talked about. He was a big religious guy, and all the rest of that, which is fine. But whatever, someone would call up to talk about the heinous gun control laws of the state of Maryland, and that would last for about 45 seconds, and then he'd turn it into where it became a discussion of abortion. Abortion. My personal feelings about abortion are irrelevant, but as a talk show subject, I had decided even back then that it was worthless.
Yeah.
Everything that could be said about abortion has been said. All the minds that have been changed have been changed.
Yep.
And all you're going to do is be this giant echo chamber, one side or the other. People are going to call into the same thing. It's just redundant. It'd be like playing the same Beatles record over and over and over again. I mean, how much can you take of that? So in listening to him do all this stuff, I'm not, I don't want to challenge the guy's job. I don't want to shame the talent that I'm replacing.
Right.
But again, with all due respect, I was better than most of the guys that I sat in for. So when I got on the air the first day, I introduced myself. Hi, Brian Wilson, here on Dirk. I'm sorry, you're on Alan. Filling in for Alan Keyes. I'll be in all week, and good to have you with us. Phone numbers are the same. Everything else is the same. So, Brian Wilson, not Alan Keyes. There is one thing I'd like to state as we get started here. I admire Dr. Keyes. He's an eloquent, articulate guy, and I've seen him in front of audiences, and I had, got standing ovations and got people all riled up and all that. I said, but I'm going to borrow a page from music radio. I had done 4 years in music radio in Baltimore, and you can still mention the act there, and people will reach for their guns and rotten tomatoes and stuff like that. I said, I'm going to borrow a page from back in the days at B104. We're going to call this No Abortion Monday.
Nice.
We can talk about anything you want to talk about. We can talk about guns. We can talk about cooking. I'm an award-winning chili chef. We can talk about classic cars. I own a couple. We can talk about fishing. We can talk about the idiots in Washington, left side, right side. Anything you want to talk about. I'm not going to dictate the subject matter, but we are not going to talk about abortion. For two reasons. I think Dr. Keyes has covered that subject more than amply well in his regular show here. And B, as I just mentioned to you, that there's nothing more to say. If you hate it, if you think it's a sin, if you think it's murder, okay, I get it. If you think a woman's got a right to choose what she does with that, okay, I get it. But we're not going to resolve it. Nothing's going to get resolved. Nothing's going to happen. They're not going to repeal Roe v. Wade, and all the rest of that jazz. So we're done with that. No abortion. Anything else, bring it. Here are the phone numbers. Well, Mrs. heard that. And she got on the phone to Mr. Keyes, who was, I think, in Chicago at the time, and she was hysterical. And he tells her, you get on the phone and you call Sean Keyes, the program director, and you tell him I want him out there, and you tell him to fire him, and you tell. And
wow.
So she did, and, she called the program director and went, batshit crazy on him, and he just said, well, I can't disagree with him, So it was a big, hairy deal. So but that's what happens when people in our business, people who do what we do on our side of the microphone, get all caught up with themselves and their message and their brilliance and their ability to speak and their ability to handle callers and to condense subjects and do whatever. And frankly, that's what's killing talk. That's what's killing talk radio. There's no creativity.
Let me get another free consultation here in regards to what we're doing here at the well, actually two, but at News Talk 614. We're kind of weighing, because most people online, we know, are going to spend 2 or 3 minutes with any audio or video content at all. So do we do online talk radio in even a more rapid fire, 2, 3, 4 minutes on the subject, whereas old-fashioned radio, if you could get 8 minutes on a topic in before you had to stop? Or do we go towards what we're currently doing is more like a long-form talk show format where, screw it, we can spend 40 minutes, 20 minutes, 100 minutes talking about something or with a guest?
Well, I think you're the determining factor in answering the question, gets back to, something that was said a little bit ago. Is it entertaining? Mm-hmm. Is it compelling? Mm-hmm. Is it interesting? Are you telling the audience something they don't know? Are you treating a subject that they've never heard? Are you contradicting some main line that your audience, by virtue of your general appeal, would never expect you to say? Like a No Abortion Monday. Something that's absolutely contrary to to what the audience is accustomed to. That gets back to the same type of surprise elements and so on that we talked about also talked about earlier, is that an audience, and you also have to decide what your demographic is, because your demographic target, because you sit there and motor mouth and get through 47 subjects in 46 seconds and so on. Who does that appeal to? It's not going to appeal to me, and I'm way out of that demo. But
I'll share with you. It's like right now, 65% of our audience is over the age of 45. The main point is right there at 55. The interesting thing, though, is like we have a spike though on younger 25 to 34-year-olds, but 35 to 40 is just a vast wasteland, and then we see a huge spike in women that are over 65.
Well, first of all, the preponderance of your audience being north of 45 is you've gotten past the instant gratification addiction of the millennial. You've also gotten past the vacuity of their intelligence. You've got people who've got some mileage. They're not virgins anymore. They know where babies come from. They pay their income taxes, tie their own shoes, make their own meals, that kind of thing. And as a consequence, they're going to be more inclined, to be attracted to interesting subjects instead of the same crap over and over again. Getting back to, again, something that took place earlier in the conversation about today's music and today's lyrics. There are no lyrics. There's like 4 words and 2 chords. And they just repeat it over and 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 over again. And that's the song for 3.5 minutes. Okay, there you go. I'm a star. Well, you put that into talk radio language, and, if you just keep beating up on the same subject over and over and over again, which I was guilty of in Toledo toward the last days. Because I was so, first of all, I didn't have anybody. That's where I was going with the Rush Limbaugh thing, is Rush Limbaugh doesn't have a program director.
Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh has his own program. Nobody's going to tell him what to do. He makes zillions of dollars. He's the franchise. Nobody has to tell him what to do. Somebody did get to him. They did have a consultant get to him a couple of years ago because he said, we'll go to your calls in just a minute. We'll go to your calls in just a minute. 2.5 hours later, he hasn't taken one call. He's just sitting there bloviating.
Now, a lot of people, though, will say, and Rush has said that whenever, occasionally, he'll talk to people that want to be a talk show. He says, you've got to be able to talk for an hour without taking any calls.
No, that's just self-justification. He's just doing that to justify what he does. But if you'll notice, well, maybe you didn't, but starting about a year and a half ago, he started taking calls in the first hour. And he said so like a little kid who was pouting and was pissed off. Well, I've got to take a phone call now because I was told we have to take phone calls now in the first hour. And, of course, by now it's like 12:52.
Yeah.
So he took his calls. Neener, I got a call in. But it doesn't serve the audience. That kind of childish nonsense doesn't serve the audience. Talking about your golf game, talking about your airplane, talk about, that you don't have to sit in the cheap seats and all this jazz. He's interested in it, so he assumes that everybody else is interested in it because, after all, he's the one that's been on the air for 25 years, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can reduce that down to a smaller number. I was not infatuated with my own brilliance those last couple of years I spent on WSPD. I was astounded, absolutely astounded at the willful ignorance of the audience.
Yeah. I mean, it's what I battle with constantly on Facebook, on the program. There is just, and with a lot of people, it's not because they don't want to know, it's they simply don't have time. But what's the most dangerous is people that are ignorant of a subject but have all sorts of opinions on it.
Well, that's what I was saying. The business about the cognitive dissonance is you've got a belief system. You hear somebody in the air contradicting your belief system, so you call him up on the air and you try to engage him and prove to him that he's wrong and you're right. And he starts pounding you with evidence, irrefutable facts and history, and that shows that he's wrong. And now he's got one. He only has 2 choices. He either has to capitulate and agree that you've brought up some really interesting topics that he's going to have to think about because he's never occurred to him, or he's going to have to haul out his ad hominems and tell you what an asshole you are, and you think you're so great, and you don't know everything, and blah blah blah, and I'm going to hang up on you, click, and so on.
Mm. Yeah, so, but that sometimes, Brian, that feels so good to hang up that phone on that list.
Yeah. So that, but I thought that, well, if I just gave more information, if I had Ron Paul on more often, if I had people that could explain, these things better than I'm doing, because that must be it. I'm just not explaining it well. I'm using 3-syllable words. I'm losing the audience, something like that. especially for Toledo. Though it was that was the problem.
Wait a minute. I don't think the people in Toledo are going to be very happy. Well, wait a minute. Nobody.
I don't care. The fact of the matter is, and I didn't care when I was there either. Yeah. The fact of the matter was that there was a more than a handful of people that understood it. They got it, and they enjoyed it, and they were learning, and they were attracted to it, and so on. And the other people, all the union, thugs and slugs, that couldn't handle being told that organized labor was a massive disservice, that you didn't have to vote the way the union shop steward said you had to, and to hold your hand inside the voting booth and look over your shoulder. I mean, what the hell's wrong with you people? Where's your sense of independence? Where is your sense of adulthood? Where's your sense of individual responsibility, individuality, your own belief system? And I developed a number of theories about how it got that way, and none of which is particularly relevant at this stage.
Well, but Brian, actually those seeds you planted did work, because we did see a significant number of those union people go ahead and pull the lever for President Trump.
Yeah, well, the fact is that they did it. They voted, as most people do. They voted that way out of their own self-interest. They voted that way because, just like a liberal, he said, "I'm going to bring jobs back. I'm going to, we're going to fire up industry." So they voted for him because they wanted jobs. They wanted those union jobs back. They wanted to get those nice little cushy assembly line jobs where they could throw a monkey wrench in the assembly line and shut it down for 8 hours, which meant they could go deer hunting. That kind of thing.
It had nothing to do with Brian Wilson back in the day in Toledo talking to all those automotive workers in Detroit and the Toledo area.
No, not hardly.
No, okay.
I mean, there were some. I got emails saying, I can't possibly say this among my friends, but you're absolutely right, and and that's nice. But I really wasn't. I wasn't trying to convert Toledo, into a massive den of libertarians. I was trying to get the audience to appreciate that there was another side of the coin, that there was an alternative to the Toledo City Council. There was an alternative, to being perpetually raped by these idiots that got perpetually reelected to perpetually rape them again.
We've got the same situation with the city council here in Columbus, and have had it for 20 years. It's an elite junta of business and liberal politicos that have controlled the system. And in the most recent primary, Brian, which was an open primary, we had the entire slate get into the primary, but only 6%. 6% of the voters actually cast a vote.
Well, good for them. I support the people who didn't vote. I support people what people. If I had an essence of part of this book that I'm working on, the heart of it is that you cannot. There are no moral people in government. None. Now, there may be people who don't sleep with other people's wives or husbands. There may be people who don't, steal from their kids' piggy banks, and that kind of routine. But by virtue of the fact that government is immoral, if you support government, then you're supporting immorality. And actually, the question is, well, what do you mean government's immoral? What's wrong with it? You have to have No, here's the deal. Government is the authorization by a group of people to exert force over everybody else. And that is what is at the heart of immorality. It's not whether you're a pedophile. It's not whether or not you torture puppies. It's not whether or not you steal from the collection plate at church. Those things are wrong. They're morally wrong. But what is the heart, if that's the appropriate word, what is the heart of immorality? It's force. Force is unilaterally immoral, with the sole exception being the use of lethal force to defend yourself or your property. Every other use of force is aggressive force. You pay your income tax, it's voluntary. Really? Volunteer not to pay them. Ultimately, men with guns will come and forcibly remove a portion of your property. That's immoral. Well, how are we going to pay for the roads? Who gives a damn how you pay for the roads? You could do it voluntarily, and maybe you wouldn't have as good roads. But what do you want? Good roads and endorse the immorality of force, or have to dodge a couple of potholes and know that it's being done voluntarily by a free people? So you cannot cite any aspect of government that is moral, because all of government is force.
Just the concept of government.
Yes, it is ruling. Oh, government is whatever form you want. Whether you want democracy, oligarchy, tyranny, fascism, any form of government is a different label on the use of force. That'd be like saying, well, I'm going to come over to your house, I'm going to kill you. I may use the 22, I may use the 357 Magnum, I may use the 45, I may use the 44 Magnum, I may use the 30-06, I may use the 223. What difference does it make? You're dead.
Yeah.
You know, somebody is aggressively forcing themselves to take their life away from you or your property away from you. That's the purpose of government, and we are sold this asinine bill of goods that we have to do it that way, because if we didn't, then we'd all go around killing people. And what does government do? It goes around killing people. It goes around, forcing themselves into houses because somebody decides they want to puff on a weed. I mean, how insane is that?
Yeah.
You know, and you can take thousands and thousands of examples of getting pulled over, as I did the other day, because I wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Yeah.
You know, what crime has been committed? Who got hurt? I'm not a safer driver if I'm wearing a seatbelt. And had I been wearing an enforced seatbelt back in 1966, once again, you'd be talking to somebody else today. I would have been just a stain on the highway down in South Louisiana. So it's, you get into all these things, but people don't think about that. They think about, well, gotta buckle my seatbelt.
Gotta be
you're
safe.
buckling your seatbelt
Gotta
because
be safe.
you want to be because you want to be safe. Because in fact, seatbelts do save lives. Well, that's great as long as it's your own choice. If you're buckling because you don't want to get
we're even terrified. We're terrified, Brian, to go out of our own homes if we don't have our cell phone because, God forbid, something happen.
Yeah, I'm terrified if I go outside of my home without my Glock 19.
See, there you go, folks. Right there, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't give a damn about the cell phone. It's just a pain in the butt. You know, I can take care of myself in other ways, but sometimes there's somebody out there that's bigger, more aggressive, and has evil designs on my corpus delectable. So I don't, I don't watch that.
We are talking with one of the most unique men that I know, Brian Wilson from the Libertas Media Project. His current project underway with the weekly podcast usually comes out on Wednesdays, Judging Freedom with Judge Andrew Napolitano. Brian, before we wrap things up, I wanted you to talk a little bit about your new book that's out now. Both on Amazon and Kindle, Watercolored Memories, the story of Lauren, and you're modest about that. And I think the most important thing about your new book is why and how you wrote it, because so many people, like myself, also we've had for years this book or multiple books that are in us, and we just need to sit down and take the time to do it. Well, you actually did do that. Give a little background on how Watercolored Memories on Amazon and Kindle right now came about.
I honestly don't know if I know the answer to that. The fact is that the story, everything in the book is true. It's a true story. I met a girl on a blind date. I went head over teapot for her. We were 16, 17 years old at the time. And a lot of things happened after that make up the story. It has a surprise ending, which may or may not appeal to people. I read a review online today of a woman who read it and said that she laughed and she cried and she wished it had, and so on. But I mean, that was the whole idea of telling the story. I wanted to tell the story. It's pretty unique in the sense of the same type of thing happening today, and so on. But it was a fascinating story as I experienced it. It was part of my life. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this happened. Oh my God! Now this. And I would tell it to people, just as you get into a conversation about something, dating, girls, women, whatever, and people would listen to that because it would take probably 15, 20 minutes, to tell it as expediently as possible.
So you would tie them up and put them in the corner and force to hear the story.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it'd have an audience of one or less, that that I could conjure into it and so on. And invariably, everyone was, and I think I'm being objective here. People were, I wouldn't say mesmerized, but they listened and they enjoyed it. They were fascinated and they were startled at the way it ended, and and so on. So somewhere along the line, I started thinking about writing it as I started writing other things, like for Lou Rockwell and my first 2 books that I wrote. And it was something I enjoyed. The written word and the spoken word. There's a lot of interesting contrast between the two and doing it. So I wrote it for the first time about 12, 15 years ago, and it sucked. It sucked. I didn't have it all down. I wasn't confident enough in myself to write it as a true story.
A lot of authors aren't, or people that would like to write a book, they're really not sure where to start. They're really not sure how to go about it. I mean, there's different schools of thought of just taking down the pen or pencil and start writing in long form, or get on the word processor, and that's a whole issue right there. Or do I lay it out first in a outline, chapter by chapter? How did you do it?
Well, I just started writing it as it happened. And in fact, one of the things that survived all the number of times I wrote it and threw it away, wrote it, deleted it, wrote it, thought it was good. The computer crashed. I lost it. I had to start over again.
Well, Ernest Hemingway lost like an entire briefcase of his stories. He had to rewrite all over, so maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, well, you should have had one of my computers. Yeah. So I did that. Then I made a serious effort, I think probably 10, 12 years ago, to write it. But I felt compelled to write it as, in a different kind. I didn't use my name. I didn't use any of the people's names. I didn't use the town that it happened in or any of that. I camouflaged all of that because I didn't have I didn't have the self-confidence or the self-respect or the self-whatever to want to put it all down there. I mean, it's certain parts of it are pretty revealing. I would think anybody who read the story within the next day or two who have listened to any portion of what we've done here would be pretty astounded in the personality difference. But so anyway, I wrote that and I let that sit for about a year, and I went back and read it and said, well, this really sucks, and put it through the shredder. And I said, you know what, somebody, I don't remember who, and I should probably give him or her a big kiss. As I said, look, just write it. Just write it, though. Just tell the story, just like you told me. Just tell the story. You can always fix it in the mix, just like radio.
Well, and they say, Brian, behind every good writer, there's a great editor, and you definitely had one.
Yeah. And there she is now.
That is our the News Talk 614 mascot. A lot of old stations, would have somebody dress up in a dog costume. We actually have a real puppy.
Yeah, well, that's nice. Ordinarily, in my station, they had them on a cart. But I went ahead and I did that. I just wrote it out, and I was okay with it. I made a couple of tweaks here and there, and I had some friends, very close friends, whom I met when I was at LSU, who went out to Hollywood and was doing some movie stuff out there, movie script writing and whatever. So I sent it out to Fred and Mickey, and I asked them, I said, would you take a look at this? And they liked the story, and they showed it to a couple of studios, and they all turned it down cold. And ultimately, being the good friends that they were, they've both since passed away. They came by and said, well, quite frankly, it sucks. It's just not a story that anybody's going to be able to get wrapped around as a movie, because you don't have a protagonist, and you don't have sex, and you don't have violence, and you don't have any of the things that are going to appeal to a movie-going audience.
It doesn't fit the formula.
Yeah. So I thought, all right, well, terrific, and then I started seeing other movies, and read other books that were as void of those things. Like Endless Love is one of the most intense books I've ever read. I mean, it's got some pretty remarkable sex in it, but it was as an emotional expression, It was very, very intense book. I was really impressed with it. Then I read Love Story. Of course, everybody read Love Story.
Right.
And that that didn't have any sex in it either or violence. It was except I think there was a snowball fight or something. But it was and I thought, well, gee, that turned into a huge, kind of sappy. Nevertheless, it was a big deal. And then I saw The Bridges of Madison County.
Great movie.
And I read the book. I read the book, and I saw the movie, and I even bought the damn CD. And I thought, and because there are so many parts of that paralleled certain parts of the story of Lauren,
right?
I thought, why the hell can't I write this thing? So I hauled it out again, and I sat down, and it took me about a year. There are 10 chapters and an epilogue and so on, and it took me about a year because what happens in the writing process, I was told, and I have since discovered, is that, so you write it and you let it sit for an hour, a day, a week, and then you go back to it and you say, and you nip it here and you tuck it there and you change this and you pull this out, then you put it back in, then you turn it upside down, then you translate it into Latin, then you burn it. It's all this jazz until you finally get it to the way you want it. And one author told me, he said, you'll know the book is done, you'll know the book is ready, is when you're so sick of it you can't pick it up anymore. And that point arrived. I just can't keep going, because every time I go through it, I'd say, I'm going to change that if to a but and a thee to a that.
Did you edit your book? Did you edit for time or pages, or did you edit just strictly for content? What was on your mind when it came? That's
all I edited. That's all I did. I wrote it, and I wanted it to read the way I wanted it to read. I wanted to get the point across, the story across, the feelings across, the atmosphere, the smell of the grass, the whole, as much as I could, without getting too wordy.
Right.
You can spend 3 paragraphs talking about what it was like to slide your hand up some girl's leg, but by that time everybody's just left and took a cold shower and said the hell with it.
Right.
So you've got to develop a sense, because I don't think it can be taught, although it is. You've got to develop a sense of how much is enough. Enough is enough, and too much is plenty. How do you make that differentiation? To know when to stop, or make the differentiation and say, well, that's too shallow. You really need to put more into it. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. I'm not a trained writer. I've picked up pointers from people like Jim Bovard, who's got, I don't know how many books out. Andrew Napolitano has got 10 books out, and so on. I picked up little things from them. Of course, they don't write what is essentially a autobiographical romance. Not even long enough to be a novel. I think
an autobiographical nonfiction romance novel.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But I remember interviewing Robert Ludlum. And for those of you, he's the guy who did the Mattery Circle, the Bourne Identity, and and all those things. Right. And they're incredibly thick books and convoluted and complicated. And while this didn't help me at all in writing my book, I asked him, how do you do it? How do you keep all this stuff straight? He sits down with a legal-size yellow lined paper and a massive stack of number 2 pencils.
I've got a pile about 1.5 feet of just that type of writing material and those same writing utensils.
Yeah, but he's good.
Oh, well, that is true. Yeah.
So anyway, to answer your question, that's the way it all came about. And fortunately, my wife Cassie, who was the news director at WSBD for a while,
who had a great relationship with the mayor's office, if I recall.
Oh, well, she had a great relationship with the mayor's office because her husband was a butthead, according to Carlton Shit for Brains Finkbeiner. And
if I recall, your news department was banned, weren't they?
Yes, it was. And if you recall, we took them to court, federal court, and got it thrown out. And Finkbeiner got fined $10,000 for violating the First Amendment. But that's a great microcosm of what Toledo is all about. That kind of dumbass behavior in the face of what was obviously a losing proposition.
I think I hit a button with it. Can you just hear the passion coming up in Brian's voice right now? I think we hit a nerve there, Brian.
No, it's the nerve that was exposed the whole class couple of years I was there with Take Back Toledo, where we got him recalled, and all the rest of that is the frustration of the fantasy of how can sentient beings who walk upright and knuckles don't generally drag the ground can live in that town.
How did Mrs. Wilson deal as a professional news person with your instigation of that conflict?
Well, she dealt with it professionally. She explained to Brian Schaefer, whatever his name was, the press secretary, and a bunch of others. She said, look, he's my husband. He's the program director. He's responsible for that end of the hall. I'm married to him. I'm the news director. I'm responsible for this end of the hall. He doesn't influence anything that I do here. And whatever he takes from the news that we report, that's, this is just one of the many areas where all talk show hosts, pull their material from the news of the day. So if you think you're getting anything accomplished by failing to call the news department when there is a national, or there's a local alert for bad weather or school closings or press conferences or whatever the case, you're not. You're actually breaking the law. And of course that didn't fly because first of all she was a woman. Second of all, she was married to me, and misogyny runs just as rampant in Toledo politics as anywhere else. So there was that, and when they blocked the news department from a press conference that was announcing the details of what Toledo was going to do to celebrate Martin Luther King Day, that's what they. I and a couple of us went over there, and we basically forced our way in. We didn't break the door down, but we did break it.
Did you bring drums, and did you have chants, and did you?
No, we just wore our WSPD jackets. Cassie was there as a news person.
You didn't chain yourself to the door.
No. It was time for the press conference. What was his name? Wasn't it Brian Schaefer? I think that was his name. The press.
I'm thinking of Denny maybe, but.
Yeah, maybe Brian Schwartz.
There we go.
Brian Schwartz.
Yes, that's it.
So Schwartz opens the door and lets in the Blade, the TV stations, stuff like that. And as we are starting to come through the door, he tries to close it. And Schwartz was a man of prodigious proportions, and he put his weight behind it. So it took two or three of us, but we eventually forced the door open. There was something cracked. I don't know. Maybe it was Brian Schwartz. I don't know. But we all go to the room for the thing, and he calls it off. They cancel the meeting. The mayor will talk to any of you individually, but not anyone from WSPD. So I went back to the station, and I told the station manager, I said, I insist that you contact Clear Channel headquarters down in Texas, and you tell them to get in touch with their attorney here. We have a gross violation of the First Amendment, and we got it on tape. And, of course, none of the other stations, the TV stations, would not report it, even though they did get it on film, and blah, 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 blah. And
wait a minute. You guys forced your way into the press conference. The local TV there, they get the video of it, and they don't play even like 15 seconds of it?
They didn't air it. My memory is that they didn't air it until after
lawsuit.
Clear Channel took them to court, and the city lost. Well, then they had to report the decision that the city lost on the basis of the First Amendment, and this is why. And now here comes the video. But it was like I say, it was 2-3 days later, as I recall, maybe longer before they did that.
Did local TV that because of politics and or they didn't want to promote your show, or the state combination?
Probably both. Everybody, when I got to Toledo, everybody there was really comfortable doing the same old thing over and over, blah, blah, blah. The only time that there was any excitement was some of the shenanigans that Denny Schaefer pulled, and they were pretty pedestrian, by radio standards, going and standing on the mayor's porch with a megaphone or something, like
Right.
that's never been done before. But everything else was pretty much, SOP and therefore boring. And indeed, radio in Toledo was boring. But then all of radio. So the TV stations all of a sudden they've got competition. They've got a major market award-winning Syracuse Journalism School graduate running the WSPD news department, and all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't rip and read. This is holy crap. Where did this come from?
Well, and she had to make do with, was it just her, or, I mean, it was a small staff, as all Clear Channel local stations became.
It was, and fortunately, I cannot remember the name of the one guy that was there when we were there, and he was, I had to fire him, and she did get a couple other people on board. One guy is still with station in Houston. He went on to that. One of the other guys, who I will not mention, stayed. He got fired, and he stayed in town, and he did this and that, and I think he came back and blah blah blah. But not a. It was typical, the type of quality and talent and performance that you'd expect from someone who thought that the world ended just on the other side of the river, or just outside of Sylvania, or on the shores of Lake Erie, or down in Bowling Green.
Well,
I mean, that's the world.
And, when it comes to old-fashioned radio and local news, it's taken the same route as we've discussed, with local talk shows, with local music stations. When I was at the Antique Modulated station here in town, I saw a 12-person, 10-person newsroom with award-winning news reporters, shoes on the ground, be eliminated down to a skeleton, of which, by Clear Channel standards, still a huge 3-person news operation.
Yeah, well, like I say, it's all about the buck. And all about the audience, and everyone's shooting for a younger. Everyone wants that magic 25 to 54 audience, but truth be told, the southern end of that, the more 25 to 35, or 25 to 45, or somewhere around 18 to 24. That's really those are the kids that have got the money. They don't know what to do with. They'll piss it away on anything, and that's the audience. So the news. No, nobody listens. News anymore. What the hell's news? That's boring. News is boring. Punch out, whatever. So why do we need 12 people hanging around the news department here? We can just do a rip and read, get something off of one of the networks, and be done with it.
Now, once again, since this is the Dirk Thompson Hunt for the Truth show, we've gone down yet another wormhole, and we got here because we were talking about your lovely wife Cassie and the work she did for you in getting watercolored memories, the story of Lauren.
Well,
finally all wrapped up, put in a box, and actually made available to the public.
Yeah, she really did the line. I mean, I don't know. I don't. When you're doing something you enjoy, you don't consider it work. I enjoyed writing the book. It got to be a little tedious at times, but still, I was happy ultimately with the final product. But in order to submit it to the publisher, it had to be of a particular form, a particular font, a particular size font. It had to subscribe to different formatting disciplines, flush left, ragged right, blah, blah, blah. The quotes had to be like this, italics had to be like that.
Spelling had to be correct, grammar.
Yeah, well, and your spell check on Word will take you so far.
Yeah.
So she got into it, and as a journalist and as someone who has had her job depend on proofreading copy of her employees, her news people, and so on, because you can go to jail, for putting the wrong thing out there. So she's got that habit of eagle-eyeing all of that. And as I said in the acknowledgments in the book, the idea that she would spend that much time and effort going over something that concerned her husband's first love.
I never thought of it from that way either. Yeah, you're right.
But like I say, that's. You try and think about things that, round pegs and square holes. That's my life, So So that's the way it all came about, and I'm to be brutally honest, unless the UPS guy has come while we've been talking, I still haven't seen a physical copy of the book.
Well, Brian, you can log in right now to Amazon.com, Prime Delivery for you with the paperback version for $9.95. It's Watercolored Memories: The Story of Lauren, or download it right now on Kindle. I think it's under $5.
It is, and I think the average person could probably knock it out, in an afternoon. You've got some lousy weather on a Saturday, or the fish aren't biting. You can get through that thing in a few hours if your reading acumen is of decent level. And hopefully you'll go back to the website and post it. It's like I said, take your time, read it slowly, savor the moment. The story is better than most of the reviews.
Actually, we've got it up there already at newstalk614.com, my personal Facebook vomiting page, and the one verified purchase review. And again, on Amazon, there's verified purchase reviews and other, but I always look at the verified purchase reviews. And this one review, it's a 5-star, by the way, Brian. The end of the review stuck out with me. It says, every young person of today should read this book. It will give them insight into their parents' or grandparents' lives. Yes, we were young with watercolored memories, and we still are. I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation, don't realize what the older folks were like back in the day.
And I'll tell you a little bit of insight that behind the scenes stuff that you won't read on the website, or only the people who are listening to this show will know. That was written by Levon Broder. Levon was a big fan of mine when I was on KSFO in San Francisco. He lives up in Napa Valley. Her husband raises Black Angus cattle, and they grow Merlot grapes. I met her once when I was out there. She gave me the keys to her Corvette, and we drove around to a half a dozen tasting rooms because she knows I'm a big California wine fan. And then she and her husband met me at the Napa Wine Train, and we had dinner on the Napa Wine Train. And so it was a great. That's the only time I've ever met her. She's almost 80. And just a great lady, and a great family, and very nice house. To live in Napa Valley, I think you have to. And I told her, I said, I'll be happy to. I'll certainly send you a copy or whatever. She wouldn't wait. She ordered her own. And I said, I don't. That my ego isn't tied into the story because it happened to me.
Right.
I didn't. I'm not a hero. I'm not a villain. I'm not trying to sell anything. It's a story. It's a story that actually happened. That really, I think, is the attraction to the book, to the story, is that it's all true.
Well, it sounds like you did this book project out of love and passion for the story, and not necessarily, to get the book out there. And that's probably what makes all creative content good, is when it comes from the heart. Appears to be with watercolor memory.
Well, it is all of that, and I wish I could tell more about what my plans are after the fact, but it would ruin the ending. The people know how it ended, but just safe to say that maybe the story isn't over yet.
Very good, Brian Wilson. This has gone by. It seems like we just started talking 20 minutes ago, but I appreciate your insight and your stories and the lessons and knowledge you've shared with us today.
Well, it was my pleasure. I hope you do a good job out there with all that, Dirk. I think you got a great idea, and I hope it all comes together, you and the other guys. And if there's anything I can do to help, if your audience is growing too quickly, I'd be happy to come out there and fix that for you.
It might be the reverse of that, so we may actually need you.
Let me get in touch with Ripley's. I'm sure they want to hear about that.
LibertasMediaProject.com, the weekly podcast, Judging Freedom with Judge Napolitano. Brian Wilson, it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine, Dirk. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brian. 805-727-DIRK. It is the Hunt for the Truth. It is the Team Trump Radio Network. We'll be right back and get into all of the things that happened this weekend that you probably know nothing about unless you were paying attention what I was spewing on the Facey Spaceys, the inner tubes, the webs, the tweets, and the proud sponsor of the Hunt for the Truth and Team Trump Radio Network. It's the news site magazine, huntforthetruth.com. We'll be back in a second with more of this stuff and your calls also. Don't forget, it is our spring share-a-thon. We don't want you to share money, though. We just want you literally to help this grow and maybe bring back live and local talk radio on the Webio and the web waves in your area code here in Ohio. In fact, if you're interested in doing a talk show on the Webio and the web waves, we are looking for you, not necessarily those with broadcast experience that have been on the radio before. We just want people that love talk radio. If that is you right now, send an email to the Team Trump Radio Network in the subject header. Simply put, I want to be on the Webio. And you have to put Webio, just so I know that you are listening to what we're doing here at the Team Trump Radio Network. And one of the examples of that is coming up tonight at 7:10 p.m. It's the one and the only. People know him in Columbus from back in the day. The Boom Boom Candy and the RadioRampage, brought to you by Terry Wilson. TerryWilson.com, photographer, helping you develop great pictures and developing this new canon. RadioRampage on Newstalk 614.com.
Boom, boom, cannon.
Needs the comfort and inspiration of religious faith, for it is faith which helps hold our families together, builds moral and spiritual character. And today, perhaps more than ever before, there's a need to turn to a way of life based on the enduring principles of religion. There are a great many programs of religious nature on NBC Radio, which you'll enjoy hearing this Sunday. Among them, The Art of Living, the National Radio Pulpit, Eternal Light, the Lutheran Hour, the Catholic Hour, and the Hour of Decision conducted by Billy Graham. These are but a few of the broadcasts that will bring you inspiration and comfort not only this Sunday, but on the Sundays to come. Of course, the Easter message will be the highlight event this week. We know you'll enjoy hearing them as a supplement to your visit to the church of your choice. And when you do go to church this Sunday, take the whole family with you.
You have got an incredibly powerful communications device at your fingertips, and it comes in a camera that makes high-definition images and video. Now, your camera is a wonder of this period in development of those kinds of devices. We take it for granted generally, and not too many years ago, you would have required equipment costing tens of thousands of dollars, plus an engineering degree and years of specialized on-the-job training. Well, Terry Wilson has broadcast experience, both radio and television, and has been serious about the art of photography since the early 1960s. He holds certification as an adult education instructor with the State of Ohio Department of Education, and is also certified in forensic videography. If you want to learn how to fully take advantage of your device, I suggest Terry will make it easy for you. See his work and get his help at terrywilson.com.
Morning, afternoon, and night. It's all local. It's all live with open phones. We have been listening. We have heard your... We felt your solid voice will be heard. Return of live and local political talk and discussion. Streaming live and online at News Talk 614.com. Live, local, and connected. Live open phones for Columbus 24/7. Calling now. 805-727-3475. Powered by the news site magazine. HuntForTheTruth.com. The Team Trump Radio Network. TTRN. Serving Ohio, high above the Levant Tower. This Live and local talk station. News. Talk. 614. Boom, boom,
Radio Rampage, developed by TerryWilson.com. Develop your skills with Terry Wilson, photographer.
News Talk 614.com. Let's begin.
You have called the Division of Police. If you are calling about police matters other than needing a dispatcher, please press 2 for a directory of frequently requested departments.
This is
Columbus Police.
On for the Truth.
Tech 44.
I'm worried about my country. I love my country, and I feel like it's going to you know where.
We're fired up. Dissent is patriotic. Revolt against socialism and Marxism. Do not quit. Do not stop. Don't be discouraged. Be strong. Do not lose belief. Be steadfast. You are a citizen of the most powerful force of good on this creation, the United States of America. USA, 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 USA.
Dirk Thompson.
Greetings, cult members. It's the man that knows everything. Dirk Thompson, Hunt for the Truth. Looking at things going on in the world here in Columbus, across this great state from the Atlantic to the Pacific, around the world, and even in outer space. Although, having said all that, after speaking with an amazing individual, Brian Wilson from the Libertas Media Project and author of the brand new book, Watercolored Memories, available on Amazon. After speaking with Brian and some of the advice that he's had about, folks like Rush and Sean and Savage becoming parodies of themselves and repeating the same sort of things over and over again over years and years and years, maybe I need to stop saying I'm the man that knows everything. Or looking at things going on here, etc. So maybe we'll put an end to that. Right there. That's worth having Brian on. 805-727-DIRK. But we do have to find out what's going on in the world that is of importance. Once again, we have to go to, unbelievably, Donald Trump's favorite news outlet, Russia Today, for some of the truth about that missile test North Korea had over the weekend.
And claims a new type of rocket was successfully fired, which can carry a large nuclear warhead. Washington's expressed dismay over what it called the flagrant menace posed by the North. The U.S. ambassador to the UN said Kim Jong-un is growing desperate.
He's in a state of paranoia. He's incredibly concerned about anything and everything around him. And so what we're going to do is continue to tighten the screws. He feels it. He absolutely feels it. And we're going to continue, whether it's sanctions, whether it's press statements, anything that we have to do.
Doesn't appear to be affecting his actions.
Pyongyang claims the missile reached an altitude of more than 2,000 kilometers. Aside from political concern, that's what appears to have worried the mainstream media the most, as RT's Murat Gazdiev explains.
Kim the Menace is up to no good. North Korea has launched another villainous ballistic missile, this one more wicked than ever before. It rose to an altitude, a height of 2,000 kilometers. Now, we're not all rocket scientists, and we had to do some digging around to figure out what's remarkable about this number. Perspective, here's Earth. At 10 kilometers above ground, you'll find most passenger jets. At 400 kilometers is the International Space Station. Here, at 1,200 kilometers, is the maximum reported altitude ever reached by a ballistic missile. Almost twice as high, you'll find Kim's rocket. Really?
North Korea has launched what appears to be at least a new type of ballistic missile. Now, this was the first time Pyongyang had fired a missile that had reached an altitude of more than 2,000 kilometers.
Show the North may have progressed with its missile technology, or may even have developed new technology.
It could reach as far as 4,000 or even more kilometers.
So there you go. Now, when I posted about this missile launch over the weekend, I tried to give you a whole lot of detail, and I don't want to, just beat my head into the table here, but let me see if I can sum this up like a meme or like a 144-character tweet, with all of the truth that's behind the factual evidence of what this missile represents and its capabilities. It may be very difficult to do that. I think I've already gone over 144 characters right there. Okay. This missile, I'm not going to give you the model number or anything like that, because that will just make your eyes go, ugh. Now there's can your eyes go, ugh? But here's the deal. Do you remember the big parade that North Korea had? I think it was right on May, or was it before May Day? No, it was on the birthday of his dad. And one of the very last items paraded through that square on that day were these giant missiles, which remarkably resembled a lot of the long-range intermediate missiles that we ourselves have, that the Chinese have, and the Russians have, in terms of size, diameter, length, the whole works. And we sit on this program that those missiles can go out of the atmosphere. They can endanger Guam, Okinawa, Hawaii. But all of the experts, even military experts, and especially politicians, just tried to glaze you over with those are probably fake. We know that during the Cold War, the Russians on their parades had fake missiles. And you bought into it, most of you did. In fact, an alarming number of you, even where I'm at in terms of interest in politics and issues and where we stand on things, many of you constantly comment, if you do, on these postings and this information. And you're like, oh, he's nothing. This is old antique stuff. It's fake. This missile, I think I started off by saying I was going to do this really quick for you. Okay, this missile, it's an intermediate. It is intermediate to long-range nuclear missile. It has the payload capacity to carry the current size and weight of again, these are the experts, so who knows really, could be smaller, of their current nuclear weapons. We've seen the images of their nuclear warheads stored in a bunker with Kim Jong-un standing right next to them. This missile, they're saying, well, it only went 700 kilometers. It went 300 miles. The first reports that he fired it towards Russia as a threat to Russia. It landed 60 miles off the coast of Russia. It did not. Its real trajectory was directly at Okinawa, and it crashed 100 or 200 miles off the coast of Japan, but on a direct line towards Okinawa, where our troops are based. But here's the thing, you hear it went 300 or 400 miles. Most people, even people that are aware of short range, medium range missiles, know these missiles, they have a very low angle that they go over the ocean. That angle is perfectly good for our Aegis intercept systems, for the THAAD system to destroy. Pretty much guaranteed. This missile, however, sure, it went 700 kilometers horizontally. How's it go? Horizontal is a flat plane and vertical's up and down, right? Okay. Again, not an expert on anything, but I pretend to be. Horizontally, it did go that distance. The game changer here, not only the fact that this missile, which people said was a fake in the parade, is real and does work, is that vertically it went 2,000 kilometers into space out of the atmosphere. Again, I'm not good on the math or the metric system. They started to teach that to us when I was a kid in the 70s, and then they said, nah, we don't need to do this, which was idiotic to begin with. That's like 1,000 miles into space. The International Space Station floats around at only like a couple hundred miles above the surface of the Earth. It's a lot of people think it's like way out there, like, you know, we see the shots of Earth like from the moon and stuff. No, it's only a couple hundred miles up in the air. This went 1,000 miles up, which signifies it can go out of the atmosphere, which means if you shot that at a lower angle, it does have the possibility of hitting Hawaii right from there. I had said earlier that with their successful submarine launched missiles, they could hit Hawaii, but they'd have to get a submarine near enough. This missile goes 1,000 miles into space, comes back down, and by being that high up, it is going to generate extreme temperatures, extreme heat, and we all know about re-entering with space capsules and everything in the heat shields. Well, that was one of the other things the pundits and the, quote, experts were saying is that, you know, they're still 2 years away from developing the capabilities to have this nuclear weapon go into space to reach our continent and then be able to go to re-enter under all those heats. They don't have the capability to do that. This test proved that they do. And I don't think it's any coincidence that scheduled for this week is going to be, believe it or not, the very first live target against a real intermediate range missile of our high altitude strategic defense missile system, which is installed in Alaska and California. The system, there are 44 of them deployed, but they have never actually been tested against a real live missile of the exact same sort North Korea successfully fired over the weekend. The previous tests have been against kill vehicles and I don't know what you would call them, but not real missiles. And isn't it a coincidence we're finally testing that system to see if the billions and billions we've spent actually work, when it is now clear that perhaps even Los Angeles, Alaska, definitely Hawaii can be reached with a 20, 30 kiloton or more nuclear weapon. Now, somebody today told me, well, you know, they still have to be able to target it to hit our carriers and our well, with a nuclear bomb, you don't have to be that close. It's like the difference between, you know, firing a small 38 caliber handgun at a target 50 feet away or just using a 12 gauge shotgun. That's one of the things that happen in the world. Hey, Chad, do we have the sound clips from one of the other issues? This other issue, which is one of the two major worldwide implications story that has worldwide, I'm thinking faster than I'm speaking, but the other most important story that has worldwide global implications to freedom, to liberty, to quote democracy, but then again, the quote term democracy, I think, has now been completely those who control the definitions of words win, threatens us, those that believe in freedom and liberty, was a little get-together that China had in Beijing regarding something that they call the Belt and Road Initiative. That's Belt and Road. 2 words, well, 3 if you count the and. But the Belt and Road Initiative is a strategic plan that China officially announced and began developing 4 years ago, which is significant. For those that study history, the Communist Chinese government, since the very beginning with Mao, and just like Stalin and the Soviet Union, They judge and they grow and they develop things with 5-year plans. The Chinese even have 25, 50, and 100-year plans for a civilization that's been around for literally thousands and thousands of years. The Belt and Road Initiative or strategy is that of China being able to, if not take over, control all of the distributions of almost every product on Earth, from goods and services to transportation to health and even science. And it was actually very stunning. But what this entails is from the center, from China itself, developing transportation corridors of rail and freeway. That's the road part of the Belt and Road Initiative. But also sea lane transportations, ports and hubs and logistical centers where those ports are then tied into these corridors. And we know for a fact, China has bought ports here in the United States. They own ports all across the Caribbean. They own ports and run them from the Mediterranean, the South China Seas. And this plan continues to, they're building, literally right now, there are a dozen new ports being built around the world. Rail corridor is a big part of this. They now have literally thousands and thousands of miles of train systems that pour out from their 2 major manufacturing hubs in China that all create corridors into Europe, into the Middle East, and then those then go to ports that then can circumnavigate the world, which is where the Belt part of the Road and Belt Initiative comes in to play. One of the most interesting things which I did want, China Global Television, which is actually one of the news sources that we analyze each and every day when we go through. The American media is really useless. So we focus on what international news outlets like China Global Television, again, we know that it is completely bought, paid for, and run by the Communist Party in China. France 24, which is kind of like NPR and does get some subsidies from the government, although a very minute percentage. Euro News, which is an amalgamation of a group of news outlets, most of them independent over there. So we got Euro News, France 24, and Russia Today. And again, you'll hear the fake news screaming that Russia Today is owned and operated by the Kremlin, which is not true. It is much like our NPR or something like that, where monies and funds from the government do go towards Russia Today. But it is not a complete, although it does represent, that it looks at news from a Russian point of view, but it's not as bad as China Global Television, which is, lock, stock, and barrel spouting the Communist Party line. But we look at these issues, and on China Global Television, this was huge news for them, this Belt and Road Initiative. In the past 4 years, they have poured in $1 trillion into doing these worldwide projects to develop these transportation hubs, corridors, sea lanes, and seaports. And when you think about all of this, when they go into an area to build a railroad track, to build a seaport, to bring in telecommunications capabilities to remote areas, third world countries, to bring in alternative energy resources, solar, wind, water. What does that bring? It brings jobs. It brings the ability for these otherwise remote areas that were not connected with the modern world, the ability to get into that marketplace, but it brings jobs to these areas. Talk about great marketing. Talk about great outreach. I've told you for many years, when we have been doing, Mrs. Thompson and I, our naval exercises in the Caribbean Ocean on the USS Carnival, that in Caribbean nation after Caribbean nation, in Central American country after country, for 15, 20 years now, China's been doing this global outreach. They own the port that's in Freeport, Bahamas. They own or at least manage other ports in other Caribbean nations. Which, once again, when they build these facilities, for example, let's take Nassau, Bahamas. What was once the premier casino hotel resort before Atlantis, but back in the day, that was bought by a, quote, Chinese company. Again, any company from China is an arm of the Communist Party. They bought it with the plans to completely redo it, destroy it, and there are now 10,000 Chinese living in Nassau, Bahamas, building this huge project. It accomplishes a few things. China's growing so fast, and they need to continue to uplift their people and bring them into a better place economically. It gives them jobs. Otherwise, they've got 10,000 people with no jobs at home. For the places these workforces go, it creates a bigger local economy because those people have to be fed, they have to be clothed, they have to be entertained. You get the whole picture. They begin these efforts, though. They paid for football stadiums, community stadiums, as we call here in the United States, soccer stadiums, at over 20 Caribbean countries and Central American countries, and gave them out of goodwill. Why is that great? Why is that a good idea? Think about it. Football is the international game. It's like baseball used to be back in the day here in the U.S. Every kid played baseball. It was cheap. You needed a bat. You needed a ball. Soccer, football is even better than that. How many times do you see videos of poor kids in the poorest of poor situations, in the worst of worst, with their bare feet, with a ragamuffin little cluster of twine that they made into a ball, kicking it around and playing football? So the Chinese gave as gifts to all of these countries local football stadiums, bigger and better than anything they had, to hold not only football games, but other community events, get-togethers, rallies, concerts, you name it, baseball. That creates the goodwill. Then it becomes when China wants to bring businesses in, they're going to get, the wink and the nod and the helping hand. And then again, once they do that, it makes things even better. So they are creating relationships. Why did they do this, though, back 20 years ago? Why did they start giving these football stadiums to all of the countries in the Caribbean? Politics, influence. They lost a very key vote on some issue back in the late 90s during the Clinton administration, but they lost a vote on this big issue in the General Assembly of the United Nations, which is basically the United Nations General Assembly was the internet before the internet and people just yelling and shouting past each other. But they lost this key vote, and the tipping point was the Caribbean nations all voted en masse backing up the United States no vote. And that taught China a huge lesson. They needed to do something to grow a sphere of influence over these countries so that in the future, when another issue like this came up for a vote, those Caribbean nations at the beginning may still vote en masse with the U.S., but at least they're now going to start thinking about things. And then they grow into the construction projects. The Belt and Road Initiative strategy, as I call it, is what they've done in the Caribbean for the past 20 years and what they've done in Africa. People don't understand. China has newspapers. They have news outlets, coverage, influence throughout Africa. They've done the same thing in the Caribbean, the same thing in Africa, and this Belt and Road Initiative and strategy is taking what they've learned on these little test projects and now are expanding it globally and worldwide. What was most interesting, though, is the speech of President Xi Jinping from China that he gave opening up this conference, which was attended by 30 countries, a total of 60 countries and significant groups and NGOs that pretty much are all in favor of this. But the opening speech by the president of China and then the follow-up speech by President Trump's best friend, Pooty Poot, if we're supposed to believe that, and what they had to say in regards to all of this. We're going to get into the details, share some of the sound from it, simply because we were talking with Brian Wilson. Sometimes, there's just a fire hose of information being sprayed out, but we have only got a little hose to get it all in. So that's what we try to do, is I literally sit there and watch 4 hours of frickin' damn China Global Television News Network and the live coverage of the Belt and Road Forum, and I consume it all, so then I can maybe in 20 or 30 or 50 minutes try to disseminate the most important stuff. So it might take a long time in long-form talk radio like we do here at News Talk 614. But think of the time saver that is, because if you do care about an issue like that, you know you're going to try to get to the basis of the truth, and it might take more than a meme picture to do it. But it does save you from spending 3, 4, or 5 hours getting the raw material. And a good friend of mine told me, keep doing what you're doing, Dirk, because I know I can he said, I can pretty much trust you to do all of the research that I don't have time to do. And you can take all of this and it's like clay being pushed into a Play-Doh mold, and you squeeze the trigger and the good stuff comes out. So I will attempt to help you get your arms around about what really happened in the even short range, the North Korea nuclear capable with a nuclear warhead re-entry vehicle now operational. That's probably the number one story short term. But long term, the Chinese Belt and Road strategy, it's a game changer. Mrs. Thompson, for some crazy reason, actually watched this with me, number one. And it wasn't like she usually is sitting there doing something else, staring at her hand on Facebook, or, well, this time she was working on our trip review from our most recent naval exercises on the USS Carnival across the Caribbean. Returned to St. Thomas, by the way. Did some more questioning and research on the little Jeffrey Epstein, Les Wexner, Bill Clinton's teenage sexcapade island. But she was writing her very detailed review, day by day, of what we... What's that, Chad?
The plane is called the Lolita Express.
The Lolita Express would go to Jeffrey Epstein's island. One guy, when I was questioning him about the island on this most recent trip to St. Thomas, was telling me that Jeffrey Epstein actually tried to have a bridge built to the island and was going to pay like $60 million to do this bridge. But the government there, for some odd reason, didn't want the bridge there. And the one guy in the little bar I was in told me it wasn't because of the environment or getting the land, that there was other reasons behind it that he wasn't sure, but he thought was because of the whole Lolita Island and the child sex slavery trafficking going on there with the elite of the world. The Clintons, the Epsteins, the Wexners, the Europeans, the princes of England, etc. But Mrs. Thompson was actually paying attention and asking questions about what the president of China and Pootie Poo Poo were saying about this Belt and Road strategy. You have to remember, Belt and Road strategy is done by the largest communist country in the world, and they're not going to lay $1 trillion and schedule to do $3 trillion in the next 5 years into this unless it's promoting their causes, their agenda, and their communist beliefs. But nowadays you say communists and people just go, oh, you know what, they help a lot of poor people. But we're going to break down the strategy used by the president of China and the things he had to say, and kind of read between the lines and point out what he really meant and what he was really implying when he did so. Oh my gosh, we've only got 30 minutes left in the show. Might have to carry some of this truth over until tomorrow. And don't forget, coming up tonight, the Steve Boom Boom Cannon Radio Rampage, developed by TerryWilson.com. Develop your photography skills with Terry Wilson. And tomorrow morning, we got the Dano show coming up. The danger is near every morning at 6:10 a.m. on NewsTalk614.com.
Dirk Thompson.
Love your show. I think you rank up there higher than Glenn Beck, and he's pretty high on my list, about even with Rush.
Now, see, that's just silly talk right there.
No, it is not.
Brian Cranston for the Will Rogers Institute.
There are lots of things in life that can take your breath away. Your first love, seeing the world. But life isn't the only thing that can take your breath away. Asthma is responsible for more sick days and ER visits than any other condition.
For your free booklet, visit wrinstitute.org or call toll-free 877-957-7575 and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
There are many good reasons to be left breathless. Help make sure asthma isn't one of them.
The Will Rogers Institute, since 1936.
And you will undoubtedly hear it many more times as the days go by. Now, just in case you're hazy on exactly what it means, let me give you a rough idea. It means that the cost of your clothes and food has gone up to a point where the family budget has become somewhat strained. Well, that's one of those things, and you can't be expected to increase the family income. But there are some things you can do to help. For instance, take better care of your clothes. When you come home from school, change into old clothes before you go out to play. Take care of your health, because doctors and medicines are expensive. Eat well, but don't waste. Take your full share, but eat all you take. Try not to ask Mother and Dad to buy you things you don't actually need. Make the best and the most of what you've got. Try to be more than usually careful of your school equipment, such as paper, pencils, and so forth. Make them last and go as far as you possibly can. Remember that all members of a family must pull together at a time like this. So do your share.
Hi, I'm Val Dolcini, the administrator of the USDA Farm Service Agency in Washington, D.C., with an important reminder for livestock producers. January 30, 2015 is the deadline to apply for assistance if you suffered qualifying disaster-related livestock or grazing losses between October 1, 2011 and December 31, 2014. The Livestock Indemnity Program and the Livestock Forage Program were reauthorized by the 2014 Farm Bill to provide relief to ranchers impacted by drought, blizzards, and other natural disasters. You have just a few more days until that January 30 deadline to visit your local Farm Service Agency office to file an application for payment and compensation. Learn more on the web at disaster.fsa.usda.gov or call your local FSA county office. Don't wait. Act today.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the USDA Farm Service Agency.
Needs the comfort and inspiration of religious faith, for it is faith which helps hold our families together, builds moral and spiritual character. And today, perhaps more than ever before, there's a need to turn to a way of life based on the enduring principles of religion. There are a great many programs of religious nature on NBC Radio, which you'll enjoy hearing this Sunday. Among them, The Art of Living, the National Radio Pulpit, Eternal Light, the Lutheran Hour, the Catholic Hour, and the Hour of Decision conducted by Billy Graham. These are but a few of the broadcasts that will bring you inspiration and comfort not only this Sunday, but on the Sundays to come. Of course, the Easter message will be the highlight event this week. We know you'll enjoy hearing them as a supplement to your visit to the church of your choice. And when you do go to church this Sunday, take the whole family with you.
For almost 2 centuries, Americans have enjoyed the valuable privileges of freedom. Now, freedom needs each American to dedicate himself to its preservation. We must not allow our liberties to be endangered by neglect of our duties as citizens. During this year of rededication, join with your fellow Americans in reaffirming the principles on which this country is founded and the safeguarding of those principles. Make it your business to see that federal, state, and local governments are conducted honestly. Help to maintain the good morale of your sons and daughters in the armed forces. Learn the facts about all candidates and issues. Then vote for the one you believe in. Make the most of every minute on your job. Produce as much as you can, and thus increase our military and economic strength. Work for better schools and a better community. Guard your American heritage of freedom. It needs you.
Your freedoms, your liberties are being taken away. Please welcome Dirk Thompson's Hunt for the Truth.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!" I want you to get up right now Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations is this going to
get mad.
67.
I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta. We're not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You have called the Division of Police. If you are calling about police matters other than meeting a dispatcher, please press 2 for a directory of frequently requested departments.
This is
Columbus Police.
Hunt for the Truth.
Tech 44.
I'm worried about my country. I love my country, and I feel like it's going to you know where.
We're fired up. Dissent is patriotic. Revolt against socialism and Marxism. Do not quit. Do not stop. Don't be discouraged. Be strong. Do not lose belief. Be steadfast. You are a citizen of the most powerful force of good on this creation, the United States of America.
He said not just over 10.
Dirk Thompson.
Dirk Thompson, you've got the Hunt for the Truth program, part of the Team Trump Radio Network, which is powered by the news site magazine, huntforthetruth.com. Whenever you hear me reference Hunt for the Truth, it's always the number 4, by the way. Follow along on Twitter if you dare. I'm kind of mean on the personal Twitter every now and then. It's at Hunt4 and then underscore the truth.
Oh, Dirk Thompson, why did I get rid of the underscore? Just get Hunt for the Truth.
I can't. It was already taken and the person wouldn't sell it to me, so you just deal with it. At Hunt4 underscore the truth. Follow on Facebook. Like me. There's only a few likes available, but also follow. We're doing extreme vetting, though, with only 1,000 friends left. Guys, if your profile picture has you wearing your badonkadonks and your ass stuck out, it's an automatic no confirm. You are bleeded. And it is our share-a-thon here at newstalk614.com. Trying to grow. Live and local talk back in Columbus, Ohio in the mornings, 6:10 a.m. with the Dano show, where the danger's near. This show at 10:10 a.m. usually. And Steve Boom Boom Cannon, now he's a veteran. He's a radio pro. You listen to him for 20 years in Columbus, Ohio on the old station. He does start promptly. Right on the nose, 7:10 until 9:10 with the Radio Rampage, brought to you and developed by Terry Wilson Photography. Terry can help you develop the skills to take incredible summer vacation photographs. Visit him and find out more at terrywilson.com. But let's find out what's really going on in the world, folks, that we need to pay attention to.
And we start with the latest from the Belt and Road Forum. On top of the pledges and well wishes from high-level delegates from around the world, the forum has also produced massive deals and a definite tone for the near future. Our reporter Han Peng has more.
The forum has started with President Xi Jinping announcing massive investment plans.
本次论坛期间，我们还将签署一批对
During the forum, a number of policy agreements and action plans will be signed. We will also launch a Belt and Road Cooperation Initiative on trade connectivity together with some 60 countries and international organizations.
And it wrapped up with major deals signed among the 1,500 delegations from over 130 countries, all looking to boost trade and connectivity.
2014年至2016年，中俄同“一带一路”沿线国家贸易总额
Total trade between China and other Belt and Road countries has exceeded $3 trillion from 2014 to 2016, and China's investment in this country has surpassed $50 billion. Chinese companies have set up 56 economic cooperation zones in over 20 countries, generating for those countries some $1.1 billion of tax revenue and 180,000 jobs.
为有关国家创造近11亿美元税收和18万个就业岗位。
Moscow used to be concerned the Belt and Road would conflict with Russia's Eurasian Economic Alliance. Now Russian President Vladimir Putin says he wants the two linked.
Partnership will help us seize the unique opportunity of building a single space of cooperation from the Atlantic to the Pacific for the first time in history.
Although participation in the forum does not mean agreement on all issues, world leaders seem willing to work with China amid increasing protectionism.
I think that today China has a leading role in promoting multilateralism in the world.
There you go. That's a little bit of that was the headline news today on China Global Television, and was been there featured all week long on this Belt and Road strategy. It's really the Chinese plan to dominate the world by controlling the transportation hubs, the train systems, the fiber optic corridors, the freeways, the seaports, the sea lanes, the trains, the freeways, the information, even pipelines, all centered from China, and then zooming out in a massive web. There's some graphics. If you go to huntforthetruth.com, and there's a couple of stories posted by this Belt and Road strategy with infographics that show you visually so you can see how, again, put yourself in the shoes of the Chinese. If you want to control the world and influence the world, this is exactly what you do. These infographics show you just that. So this happened over the weekend. That's how China Global Television covered it. They also then had on a critic, and that's the one thing, China Global Television and Russia Today, they come from a certain ideology, from a certain perspective, but they do, although slanted, still a better job of giving you both sides of what the argument is. But they did then go into a segment after they touted and gave the propaganda of the Belt and Road strategy. They then had some critics on and asked them some very pointed questions. We can get into that as well. But most importantly, it was the things that the Chinese Jinping said at the opening of the Belt and Road Initiative on, I'm trying to adjust for it was, I believe, it would have been Saturday afternoon.
I hope that by engaging in full discussion of exchange of views, we will contribute to pursuing the Belt and Road Initiative, a project of the century, so that it will bring benefit to people across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, over 2,000 years ago, our ancestors, trekking across vast steppes and deserts, opened the transcontinental passage connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa, known today as the Silk Road. Our ancestors, navigating rough waters, created sea routes linking the east with the west, namely the maritime Silk Road. These ancient Silk routes opened windows of friendly exchanges among nations, adding a splendid chapter to the history of human progress. The 1,000-year-old gilded bronze silkworm displayed at China's Shanxi History Museum and the Balidong shipwreck discovered in Indonesia bear witness to this exciting period of history. Spanning thousands of miles and thousands of years, the ancient Silk routes embodied the spirit of peace and cooperation, openness and inclusiveness, mutual learning, and mutual benefit. The Silk Road spirit has become a great heritage of human civilization. Peace and cooperation. In China's Han Dynasty, around 140 BC, Zhang Qian, a royal emissary, left Chang'an, capital of the Han Dynasty, He traveled westward on a mission of peace and opened an overland route linking the East and the West, a daring undertaking which came to be known as Zhang Qian's journey to the western regions. Centuries later, in the years of Tang, Song, and Yuan dynasties, such routes, both over land and sea, had boomed. Great adventurers, including Du Huan of China, Marco Polo of Italy, and Ibn Battuta of Morocco, left their footprints along these ancient routes. In the early 15th century, Zheng He, the famous Chinese navigator in the Ming Dynasty, made 7 voyages to the western seas, a feat which is still remembered today. These pioneers won their place in history not as conquerors with warships, guns, or swords. Rather, they are remembered as friendly emissaries leading camel caravans and sailing treasure.
Okay, stop it, Chad. You know, that's a nice little historical story of what China did 1,000 years ago, even 2,000 years ago, in trading with far-off places. And you may have heard a lot of things you weren't aware of. But what he's really doing is President Ping is actually, he's making a not only historical, not only political, but a humanitarian claim that what they're now doing with Belt and Road, they have a right to do. That they historically have proven that they are the ones that can do such a thing as Belt and Road for the good of mankind. For example, he talks about Chinese shipping. Again, people, we were taught wrong in school in the 70s and the 80s. We were not taught the complete story of civilization, of exploration, because now with archaeology and discoveries, and just like President Ping said right there, in the 800s, even the 700s, China, and we've found the wreckage, had sailing ships that were pretty much identical copies in the same dimensions, or some were even larger than what the European explorers began using in the 1400s, 1500s, and 18th century to discover all of these far-off places. And we know from history then to exploit those far-off places, to make them into colonies.
You talk for a living, Dirk Thompson.
But they had sailing ships that would go from China to India, across the Indian Ocean, to the Middle East, into Africa, even to the Horn of Africa, thousands and thousands of miles. And as he just said, they did not try to take over those cultures, those nations, those civilizations. They simply did it for trade. So not only is he telling this historical, more accurate story than we were taught, but what it does at the same time is it shows a historical claim to do this all over again at a massive, massive scale, and in return spreading communist Chinese influence and making countries dependent upon their transportation and distribution systems on land and sea, hence the Belt and Road communist strategy of changing the world. Continue, Chad.
Loaded ships. Generation after generation, the Silk Route's travelers have built a bridge for peace and for East-West cooperation. Openness and inclusiveness. The ancient Silk Route spanned the valleys of the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus and Ganges, and the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. They connected the birthplaces of the Egyptian, Babylonian, Indian, and Chinese civilizations. They connected the lands of Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam, as well as homes of people of different nationalities and races. These routes enabled people of various civilizations, religions, and race to interact with and embrace each other with open minds. In the course of exchange, they fostered a spirit of mutual respect and engaged in a common endeavor to pursue prosperity. Today, ancient cities of Jiuquan, Dunhuang, Tulufan, Samarkand, Baghdad, and Constantinople, and ancient seaports of Ningbo, Quanzhou, Guangzhou, Beihai, Colombo, Jeddah, and Alexandria are standing as the living monuments to these past interactions. This part of history shows that civilization thrives with openness and nations prosper through exchange. Mutual learning. The ancient Silk routes were not portrayed only, they boosted flow of knowledge as well. Through these routes, Chinese silk, porcelain, lacquerwork, and ironware were shipped to the West, while pepper, flax, spices, grape, and pomegranate entered China. Through these routes, Buddhism, Islam, and Arab astronomy, calendar, and medicine found their way to China, while China's 4 great inventions and silkworm breeding spread to other parts of the world.
Okay, do you see there what I was saying? He is laying out the reason and the cause and why they have claim to go ahead with this Belt and Road strategy, because when they did it 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, they didn't take over people. They didn't send their military in. They did not send, tens of thousands of Chinese to live in these countries, although they're doing it now, like I described down in the Caribbean on their projects there. So let's skip into the middle of this. This is a 45-minute speech he gave. You can get the whole thing if you go to our YouTube channel, Team Trump Radio Network. Just search that. You'll go right there. Or no, actually, Chad, you did some work, didn't you? Because some people were complaining they couldn't find our YouTube channel that easily. So now you just go to TeamTrumpRadio.com, and that gets you right to the YouTube channel where you can watch this entire... It's very important. Again, tonight when you get home, take goddamn 45 minutes and watch the whole frickin' speech. Oh, you might not be able to watch, whatever it is you watch on Hulu, that's 40 minutes. Give that up, take a fast, and watch something that's very important, that months and years from now you go, I should have listened to that 40 minutes that Dirk Thompson guy was telling me to listen to. So this is right into the meat of the speech, and I don't know where Chad's jumping to, but it really doesn't matter, because every 2 minutes, this fellow, when you break down and parse his words and his thoughts and what they really mean, is terrifying.
For pursuing the Belt and Road Initiative. Every year, the Chinese government provides 10,000 government scholarships to relevant countries. China's local governments have also set up special Silk Road scholarships to encourage international cultural and educational exchanges. Projects of people-to-people cooperation such as Silk Road Culture Year, Tourism Year, Art Festival, Film and TV Project, Seminar, and Think Tank Dialogue are flourishing. These interactions have brought our people increasingly closer. These fruitful outcomes show that the Belt and Road Initiative responds to the trend of the times, conforms to the law of development, and meets the people's interests. It surely has broad prospects.
Pause it right there for a second. All right, did you see the import of that? So I've already explained to you that all of these projects, they're literally doing worldwide now. Not only do they bring jobs to the local people and economically lift them up, but so many of these Belt and Road projects right now are happening in third world countries. And so there are 10,000 scholarships to these specific areas. So number one, they're giving the locals and the families their jobs, paying 3-4 times the amount that they ever made per month as a family. They're taking the young and the soon-to-be influential, sending them back to China and putting them in schools and training them to be doctors and engineers and scientists. They're not training them to be women's studies majors. They're not sending 10,000 third world students to learn and become doctors in philosophy. No. Science, engineering. So they then have the skills that they've learned under a communist system, go back to their homes and families that are now improved because of the Belt and Road strategy of not only opening them up to business and trading in goods, but the fuel and other resources and information technology. Because in these corridors they're building, it's not just trains, it's not just trucking highways, it's pipelines, both actual like natural gas, oil pipelines, but information pipelines, fiber optics. And that's all well and good. That is great, but it's being done under their umbrella of their sets, their rules, and their communist philosophy. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now let's get to the end of the speech because, frankly, we only have like 8 minutes of time before the Facebook Live and the YouTube Live shut off the shows automatically. So let's get in towards about the last 5 minutes because he sums it up with some ominous warnings if you actually listen to what he really means. Go ahead, Chad.
To conduct overseas RMB fund business with an estimated amount of about 300 billion RMB. The China Development Bank and the Export-Import Bank of China will set up special lending schemes respectively worth 250 billion RMB equivalent and 130 billion RMB equivalent to support Belt and Road Corporation on infrastructure, industrial capacity and financing. We will also work with the AIIB, the BRICS New Development Bank, the World Bank, and other multilateral development institutions to support Belt and Road related projects. We will work with other parties concerned to jointly formulate guidelines for financing the Belt and Road related development projects. China will endeavor to build a win-win business partnership with other countries participating in the Belt and Road Initiative, enhance trade and investment facilitation with them, and build a Belt and Road free trade network. These efforts are designed to promote growth both in our respective regions and globally. During the forum, China will sign business and trade cooperation agreements with over 30 countries and enter into consultation on free trade agreements with related countries. China will host the China International Import-Expo starting from 2018. China will enhance cooperation on innovation with other countries. We will launch the Belt and Road Science, Technology and Innovation Cooperation Action Plan, which consists of the Science and Technology People-to-People Exchange Initiative, the Joint Laboratory Initiative, the Science Park Cooperation Initiative, and the Technology Transfer Initiative. In the coming 5 years, we will offer 2,500 short-term research visits to China for young foreign scientists. Train 5,000 foreign scientists, engineers, and managers. And set up 50 joint laboratories. We will set up a big data service platform on ecological and environmental protection. We propose the establishment of an international coalition for green development on the Belt and Road, and we will provide support to related countries in adapting to climate change. In the coming 3 years, China will provide assistance worth 60 billion RMB to developing countries and international organizations participating in the Belt and Road Initiative. We launch more projects to improve people's well-being. We will provide emergency food aid worth 2 billion RMB to developing countries along the Belt and Road, and make an additional contribution of $1 billion to the assistance fund for South Sudan.
I bet you. Isn't that making liberals and far leftists and Marxists here in the U.S. extremely happy? And they're going, they're going to give them food aid, they're going to give them health aid, science aid, scholarships, all that's the goodies. That's just like here in the U.S. with the left. They want to hand out all the freebies, all the goodies. So then people say, okay, yeah, we'll take your Belt and Road because that's good too for these people. This strategy is going to lift these third world areas in the world from third world fucking... Oh! What? Yeah, Gertrude just said that's a $5 F-bomb fine right there. It's the first F-bomb of the week, though, which is pretty good. Although when we had Brian Wilson from the LibertasMediaProject.com and host of their weekly podcast, Judging Freedom with Judge Napolitano, I think he used the S word a few times. Do you find our guests too? Gertrude says I have to pay for it. What? Wilson said bullshit 3 times? And I said it twice? All right, $5 coming your way. But all of this is good. They're going to lift multiple dozens and dozens of nations and areas with jobs and education and food, and they get in on the United Nations General Secretary. He endorsed this too, and he focused on the fact that clean air, alternative energy is all part of this growth, which is the way to go, because I'm telling you, I use the solar panels, the battery packs myself. Our RV escape unit is completely off the grid, 100% powered by solar. I never have to use electricity ever again, if need be. And that technology is more affordable now than traditional fuels, but you don't have to develop the infrastructure to go into an area that you can put up a solar plant and instantly power an entire village, hook them into the internet. Boom. Again, third world, first world. So what? We got to take some Marxism and communism along with you take the bad with the good. That is the danger of this. Unfortunately, our timer's about to go off here on News Talk 614 in the hunt for the truth. But we're going to turn around right now. If you missed any of today's program, especially an eye-opening, we covered so many topics that I know you, if you're just tuning in, are going to enjoy with Brian Wilson. We're going to rerun the show in about 10 minutes from now. It'll be back up on YouTube Live. Remember, you can get to our YouTube channel now directly by going to TTRN, TeamTRUMPRadioNetwork.com, and watch it on Facebook Live at Facebook. You get there by going to newstalk614.com. And I think we've also got a link to the Shoutcast feed, because we're now on a regular Shoutcast, an online radio feed. So you don't have to watch the moving pictures, and you can do other things on your phone rather than stare at it. We're off to a great week. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to dive into more of the truth about the North Korean missile crisis and this Chinese Belt and Road strategy, which are the 2 most significant stories you need to be paying attention to this week, and not how many scoops of ice cream Donald Trump had. That and more of the truth again tomorrow, 10:10 a.m. And then coming up tonight, more live and local talk exclusively in Columbus, Ohio on newstalk614.com with Steve Boom Boom Cannon's Radio Rampage, developed by Terry Wilson, photographer. He'll help you develop the skills to take incredible summer vacation photos. Maybe you want to learn how to use the video camera on that $700 thing you've got in your hand. He can do that as well. Contact him simply by going to terrywilson.com. It's been a whole bunch of fun today. I can't look enough forward to tomorrow's edition of The Hunt for the Truth. It's Dirk Thompson. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Dirk Thompson.
Love your show. I think you rank up there higher than Glenn Beck, and he's pretty high on my list, about even with Rush.
Now, see, that's just silly talk right there.
No, it is not.
Brian Cranston for the Will Rogers Institute.
There are lots of things in life that can take your breath away. Your first love, seeing the world. But life isn't the only thing that can take your breath away. Asthma is responsible for more sick days and ER visits than any other condition.
For your free booklet, visit wrinstitute.org or call toll-free 877-957-7575 and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
There are many good reasons to be left breathless. Help make sure asthma isn't one of them.
The Will Rogers Institute, since 1936.
And you will undoubtedly hear it many more times as the days go by. Now, just in case you're hazy on exactly what it means, let me give you a rough idea. It means that the cost of your clothes and food has gone up to a point where the family budget has become somewhat strained. Well, that's one of those things, and you can't be expected to increase the family income. But there are some things you can do to help. For instance, take better care